Good morning. A little bit of a late start today. Every time we do something new, it's a good thing because we've added stuff, but we get a couple of technical glitches. But new indeed we are. Welcome. Now we have two screens. For those of you who watch the program, you can see our guests each and every day. We recorded a number of commercials and other spots that you'll hear tomorrow because this is the new and increasingly improved Radio Westchester. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone on this Tuesday, January 21st, 2020, and it is chilly. It is 16 degrees, going to get up to maybe 34 today, and they're telling us it'll be sunny, but continue to be cold, and it'll level off, though, at about 30. We'll be back with the weather in just a few minutes, but we do have headlines for you today. Playland's back in the news. Westchester accuses the would-be manager of undermining the county. This is troubling right here in New Rochelle. A man robs a bodega the day after he's released under the new bail reform. In Putnam County, a sheriff's deputy stabbed a suspect's charged with attempted murder. No surprise here, and we'll be talking about this today, tomorrow, and regarding other locales. Those red light cameras, White Plains rakes in $2.4 million from 35,000 notations. A lot more news coming up. Of course, the impeachment starts today. And of course, Derek Jeter probably goes into the Hall. Well, we know he goes into the Hall of Fame today, but will he go in unanimously? We'll find out. Let's take a look at the weather. And as you know, the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. United Hebrew, they are voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. 16 degrees. It feels cold out there. Thank goodness it's not very breezy. The wind's 5 to 10 miles an hour. We'll get up to 34 at a high today, but only briefly. It'll be mostly clear. Totally clear today. Sunny. Partly cloudy later on tonight, but reasonable with lows around 18, if you call that reasonable. The wind will be 5 miles an hour. Now tomorrow, more sun and not as cold as today, with highs around 38 degrees. The wind out of the west-northwest 5 miles per hour. Wednesday night, mainly clear with lows around 34 degrees. Let me adjust the sound. You're probably not hearing me very well. I have these little lights I have to check. It is Thursday, mostly sunny skies. The highs will be 42. The overnight low will be 28, and Friday more sun. The high will get up to 44, practically a heat wave. Same way, not so much on Saturday. We may even have another winter storm, but we'll get to that later. The bottom of the hour is brought to you by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, their partners, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. Let's get to some of those stories, and we're going to do the Playland story second because this first story we have been on for weeks. One day after being released under the state's new bail reform law, a criminal suspect attacked a New Rochelle shop owner and robbed him. Records are showing that today. This in Loa this morning. The day after one Omori Moore pleaded guilty to a New York City bank robbery, he was charged and released. He attacked, and he pleaded guilty. He attacked a bodega employee and robbed the North Avenue store for the second time in 6 months. The attack was the kind of fallout law enforcement voiced concerns about as the law headed for approval this year. Now, folks, if you're a Democrat or a left-leaning Democrat that cares about justice, if you don't fix this soon, and this is opinion now, this is my take. The backlash, you're going to feel it at the election, but more importantly, it's going to take away from all of the credibility and the windfall you've gotten because of the election or the reputation, at any rate, of Donald Trump. And it will have been deserved. And the person on the spotlight now is one of our own beloved figures. It was in the paper yesterday, Andrea Stewart-Cousins. She is one of the stars of Westchester politics. Historically so. She's going to have to stand up and be counted. This is not a good thing. And frankly, if Democrats don't fix it, they get all that they deserve. A Putnam County Sheriff's Office deputy that suffered a severed artery after he was stabbed Monday morning in Putnam Valley is in stable condition following surgery. The deputy was stabbed by an emotionally disturbed person on Peekskill Hollow Road. Deputies responded to a disturbance at the residence around 10 a.m. The deputy was transported to Hudson Valley Hospital, where the severed artery was repaired during surgery. The perpetrator is 25-year-old Timothy Redmond. He was taken into custody, Langley said. Redmond has been charged with attempted murder, attempted assault, first-degree assault, and aggravated assault of a police officer. Now, the story, not that we put it on hold, but we talked about it yesterday for about 20 minutes with George Latimer, and we figured it would be in the news, and nonetheless, here it is. Westchester County accused the would-be operator of Rye Playland of undermining the county government and trying to, quote, sabotage Playland's success in court papers filed this week. This from Mark Lungriello in the Journal News. The county is trying to dissolve a 30-year contract that gave to the company Standard Amusements to run the county-owned park, but the two sides are locked in a federal bankruptcy court battle as the company aims to preserve the deal. Nonetheless. Now, attorneys for Westchester said in their court filing dated Monday that they want to go to trial in that battle to prove the company didn't live up to its end of the arrangement. Among the county's gripes is an accusation that Standard disseminated what Westchester called, quote, inflammatory reports that called into question food and ride safety. In the brief, folks, the battle has begun, as the county executive noted yesterday. We shall see where it goes. And another subject worthy of your discussion, if you care about local politics and the reach into your pockets, this story out of Lowhut and White Plains today. During the first 17 months in White Plains, that White Plains had red light cameras. Now get this, at a dozen key intersections, a whopping 35,494 violations were issued. That comes out to about 68 violations a day for a driver's court going through red lights. The city of White Plains collected $2,445,000. I rounded the last one there, 244,792. Let's call it $2,445,000 anyway. And it was picked up by the cameras between August 2018, when they were put into use, and the end of 2019. The cameras operate 24 hours a day. As you know, the fine for a violation is $50 with penalties accruing. And we will talk tomorrow for sure with John Bailey about that. It is 6:35. A 13-year-old girl who's been missing since Friday afternoon was found over the weekend, and we just got this story in this morning. This according to Yonkers police and reported in Lowhub. The teenager didn't return home from Palisades Prep School on Friday when she was last seen around 1 p.m. So it's not known exactly where she was or what she was doing. One faith leader from Westchester County is promoting the messages of Dr. Martin Luther King as he tries to silence all forms of hate. This yesterday out of News 12. With tears in his eyes, a Rabbi Levi Welton says he finds strength in famous words from Dr. King's I Have a Dream. Welton says that even 57 years later, that dream isn't quite a reality. The rabbi says he hopes to heal the wounds of all the communities affected by the various acts of hate that happened during the Festival of Lights in just about every corner of the tri-state, he said. And we quote him now, hate is hate, he says. It doesn't matter if it's white supremacist or a black extremist. What has to happen over here is people condemning hatred and people realizing every community has to have their narrative that must be spoken about. Police have identified the body of a woman found dead in Greenburgh yesterday. This out of News 12. Definitely now the body of one 75-year-old Jeanette Harding of Greenburgh was found outside at an office park directly across from Town Hall. They say do not believe foul play was involved in the death, but they're still waiting on autopsy results. from the county medical examiner. She was found about 7 a.m. when a maintenance worker came across the body on the grounds of the Dannon building on 100 Woodside Avenue. Greenberg Town Supervisor Paul Feiner says the investigation is ongoing. It could have been a medical incident, but they're going to have the medical examiner check it out, and then we will know. Again, the woman, according to this report, was 75 years old. Well, a number of things are happening today, as you know. Let's start with the more pleasant one. Derek Jeter we know he's going in the Hall of Fame. The question is, will he go in unanimously? Again, because he's in New York, I'm going to bet that he does. That's a nice discussion to have. I don't know that he should have gone in unanimously, but that's just me. The other thing, of course, and we'll be talking about that after the news, impeachment begins today, and it's just a blot. And all sides are covered up, and it's just a blot on our history. This will have been. But that for later on. And of course, the third item, New York's budget proposal. What to watch for today from Governor Cuomo. The $6 billion deficit will loom large as he gives his budget report today. Now, this budget issue for the next several months is going to haunt the lawmakers. They'll need to close the gap somehow. Now, Cuomo has laid out a dozen of agenda items into 2020, but he stayed clear so far from offering any specific plans. Now, Cuomo last dealt with a deficit of this magnitude in 2011 when he entered office facing a $10 billion deficit, you'll pardon me. He cut school aid, required unions to give concessions for new contracts, and put a cap on both health care spending and state spending. So he's got tough choices to make. We shall see. It's up. By the way, the budget is $175 billion, and the information there gathered from LOHUD and News 12. As those stories come in, we will share them with you here on Radio Westchester Mornings with Bob Marrone. It is 6:39, 17 degrees, and it's going to warm up, but not much. It's going to get up to 30 today. It is cold out there, but at least it's not windy. Now, I set aside today two stories, and we'll talk about children first, and then we'll talk about it's a story and a new virus that's it's out in China, and now it's beginning to come to the United States. But first, this prevention of the respiratory syncytial virus, didn't know what it was. A common cause of winter sniffles, sneezes, runny noses, and coughs is respiratory syncytial virus, which is a milder form that resembles the common cold. Be careful, make sure you wash your hands when you deal with children, and if your younger children come home from school, you're at your toddlers or the older ones, keep them away from the baby. You don't want them to get this little cold. At least that's what was in News 12 today. Now this, in fact, I am personally aware of a case of someone in a nursing home, not here in Westchester, that has this illness. But here we go, and this out of CNN today. 6 people are dead and almost 300 infected as China confirms a new virus. And here we go. Let me get into the particulars of it. It's called the Wuhan, the central Chinese city where the coronavirus was first detected, announced a series of new measures Tuesday, including the cancellation of upcoming Lunar New Year celebrations, expected to attract hundreds of thousands of people. They're racing to contain the spread of the new virus that has left these 6 people dead. Tour agencies have been banned from taking groups out of Wuhan. That's the name of the city. And the number of thermal monitors and screening areas in public spaces will be increased. Now, again, we know of some cases, and it's not making the news yet here in the United States. Now, generally speaking, these viruses are not fatal, but when they're new and during the flu season, they can compound to be very dangerous. As we have more information, we will share it with you. But again, I think what's troubling is knowing, as I do, of a specific case here in the region. And I understand that there are others. We should keep our eye on that. And again, it's called the coronavirus. It is Tuesday, January 21st, 2020, 16 degrees, getting up to 30 today. We'll come back with the weather. Just want to give you a lineup of what's going to go on with impeachment. Now, today at 1 p.m., Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will call for a vote on his resolution setting the rules. Democrats and Republicans are expected to spend the day fighting over the rules, with Dems demanding witnesses and documents in a debate that will likely be put off until after the opening arguments. Tomorrow, each side is expected to be allocated 24 hours over 2 days to make their arguments. The 7-hour impeachment managers will be up first, presenting the first of an up to 12-hour stretch of arguments to senators who will be acting as jurors. Those are the impeachment managers, if you will, the prosecutors. The prosecution will be led by Representative Adam Schiff and Representative Gerald Nadler, he from New York. Thursday, the Democratic House impeachment managers are expected to continue making their case as to why President Trump abused his power. On Friday, White House counsel will take the floor, mounting an argument as to why both articles of impeachment failed to prove the president violated established law. Trump's legal team is led by White House counsel Pat Cipollone, and his personal lawyer Jay Sekulow, and his team includes Alan Dershowitz and Ken Starr. On Saturday, Team Trump's second day will present its defense. The 100 senators, including 4 who are running for president, will need to stay in Washington and are forbidden during the trial from talking or using their phones. And next week, after just 1 day of rest, the Senate will be back in session Monday, when senators are expected to be allocated 16 hours over 3 days to submit written questions to Supreme Court Justice John Roberts, who is presiding over the trial. Now, the Trump defense is essentially twofold. One, they're saying this is a brazen act. He shouldn't be impeached. And disgracefully, the Post and the no paper should do this. The New York Times, whose cover I did not see, should not be saying he's guilty before a trial, nor should the Post, as they have once again, say innocent now for the trial. That makes a mockery of our system. Whether you like Democrats or not, whether you like Republicans or not, they had the means, they had the votes, they brought this to the Senate. Yes, we know the Senate's likely to acquit. Many of us agree with, and when we say acquit, it doesn't mean the president didn't abuse his power. It doesn't mean he didn't do what he's alleged to have done. I think we all agree with it. The question is whether or not he broke the law, and even if he did, whether it's and I wouldn't call it an impeachable offense, whether it is an offense that merits removal from office. So for either side today, they know the outcome. The outcome is up to the senators, but they should respect the process. None of the senators, nor should the newspapers, be saying he's innocent before a trial. Now, defense lawyers, as you know, and I've said this many times, and one of my favorite people on the whole planet is Murray Richmond, and I kid him about it all the time. He's one of the great defense lawyers in this country. Defense lawyers get to lie, so they'll say none of this happened, that he was on the moon, blah, 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 but they do it in every case. That's just the way it is. And the other guys will make him out, the prosecutors will make him out to be the demon incarnate. Now, the president, again, can't help himself when he tweets, and he said ahead of Tuesday's Senate impeachment trial, Trump tweeted that the House was remiss in not seeking the testimony of his ex-national security advisor. They didn't want John Bolton and others in the House. They were in too much of a rush. Now they want them all in the Senate. Not supposed to be that way, he said. In a second missive, he lashed out at New York Senator Chuck Schumer, saying crying Chuck Schumer is now asking for fairness when he and the Democratic House members worked together to make sure I got zero fairness in the House. So what else is new? The president would do himself well to say nothing. Now, we all know how it's going to turn out, but sooner or later, the president shouldn't be gloating because they still may wind up hearing from him. Don't gloat when the other guys got the goods on you, but you won a technical victory. Besides, it doesn't matter anyway. Everybody except some hardcore. I even got relatives who said, he didn't do it, which, as much as I love some of these relatives, is the height of ignorance. Of course he did it. The question is it a high crime and misdemeanor? And it has nothing to do, at least at this point in time, with who else did what and when or at what point in time. Let the people decide. I am of that measure, but whatever facts need to come out, let them come out, and let's settle this on election day. It's sickening. It's a sad story for our country for a lot more reasons that I'm willing to get into here. Now, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk sports just a little bit, because I do want to talk about Derek Jeter somewhat, and then we'll get into the day. Let's take a look at the weather once again. The weather is brought to you by... I like changing up the music, okay? Welcome to the program once again. It is 6:48. You're listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, the radio station at the train station. It's Tuesday, January 21st, and it is a cold one. It's 16 degrees right now, and we're going to get up to 30 today, and that's about all she wrote. It is cold. The weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. Again, it's 16, getting to 34. Sunny, cold, highs around 30, as we said. Wind out of the northwest, 5 to 10. Tonight, mostly clear to partly cloudy, cold, but seasonable with lows around 18 degrees. Tomorrow, sunny, not as cold as today with highs around 38. Wednesday night, that's tomorrow night, mainly clear with lows near 24 degrees. And on Thursday, mostly sunny sky. The high will be 42, the overnight low 28. And as we get into Friday, partly cloudy, the high will be 44 degrees. And it's going to be warm on Friday. 44, I'll take it. I will take it for sure. And the bottom of the hour is definitely brought to you by Plug-in Virtual Reality, Dominic's Fine Cigars, the law firm of Payne & Con, Aging Issues Management, and their partners, Aging Issues Radio. Derek Jeter tonight, will join legends like Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, and Mariano Rivera, and rightfully so, as Hall of Famers who played their entire careers in pinstripes. And all of us, of course, remember that one of the cool things was his last hit was a walk-off single, I think, and he won. Now, here's some of the Hall of Fame ballot and the posters. Again, no, as much as the Post with their headlines drives me out of my mind, it's still a great paper. And I do, the sports section's the best on the planet. And good for you, New York Post. Let's see, the Post's Hall of Fame ballot. The newest inductees into the Hall of Fame will be announced tonight. And the Post's 13 voters have 5 live players receiving, I can't even read anymore, more than 75% of the vote. Here we go. Oh, wow. According to the people that are voting for the Post, these great writers, we're talking Body, Brooks, Burke, Costello, Davidoff, Hale, Kernan, King, and Lewis, Puma, Sherman, Vaccaro, and George Willis. Barry Bonds would be in if the Post writers had their way. I agree with them. Roger Clemens would be in. I agree with them. Todd Helton would be out. Derek Jeter in unanimously. Andrew Jones got some votes. Great outfield, one of the best ever. Is not going to make it this time, according to them. Jeff Kent got some votes, but would be out. Andy Pettitte would be out, and I agree with that. Andy Pettitte was a very, very good pitcher, but a Hall of Famer, nah. Manny Ramirez, now, he didn't get enough votes. Boy, we can argue that one all day. Scott Rowland out. These are people that have been recommended. Curt Schilling in almost unanimously, and he does deserve it. Forget that he's what are we going to do? Start putting people in the not put them in the Hall of Fame because of their politics? That's absurd. Particularly, we're talking about baseball players here. With the exception of a few, they didn't make their millions by cracking atoms in their basements. So whether it's a far left guy who despises Trump, or a far-right guy who loves Trump, or whatever the case may be, Curt Schilling deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. A guy who came in close but didn't make it, Gary Sheffield. Sammy Sosa, no, he doesn't quite make it. Again, Sosa's probably in the Pettitte category. Close, but no cigar. Probably shouldn't be there. Omar Vizquel. Now, the thing I read about Omar, and maybe you want to weigh in on that when we open up the phones later, but they say he's one of the greatest fielders ever, and we don't give enough consideration of that. And Billy Wagner, he's not going to make it either, according to the Post. Again, these are the Post's votes. Larry Walker, almost unanimously, he gets in. But again, that's who they like. So Bonds, Clemens, Helton, Jeter, Jones. Geez, I thought Jones would make it this year. But excuse me, I've got a runny nose. And it doesn't even have sneakers. Oh, look at this. Cespedes is running. Oh, boy. All right. Mets concerned about Cohen's perception of managerial hire. He should be. He should be. He should be. The Mets, why don't you look about what's happening across town? They really, really should. And I'm not an anti-Met guy or anything like that. All right, I'm thumbing through some of the pages here. I could care less about college. And if we have, that's when Jake comes in, he can talk to you about college football. I could care less. Now, the Knicks won, and that's important. The Knicks 106 to 86. The D ratchets up, they said, as veterans make a case versus the Cavaliers. Isn't it funny that this unknown coach is doing a better job than all these big names they've had there for the last several years? Again, I'm just finished thumbing through. The Rangers play the Islanders again tonight. That ought to be fun. As the two teams hate one another right now. And right now the Rangers are playing better than the Devils, which are a better team. But again, they lost their important game the other night against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Alrighty, otherwise, not a lot of other stuff in sports. Let's open up the telephone, see what's on your mind. 914-222-3141. 914-222-3141. Now, the interesting thing to me of the stories that we did this morning is now it has hit home here, and that is this problem with the new bail laws. Now, why anyone would think that it's a problem giving some discretion to judges. And again, I'm one of the first people to say the quality of our judges is suspect. I get that. But you can't have anarchy either. And the way to deal with a lack of quality in any line force is to be sure that there are consequences from the administrative level and from the management level. Judges need to be held more accountable. We have a process for that. We need to lean on those for whom that process is their life's work. But listen to this, and I'm going to do this story again. One day, after being released under the state's new bail reform law, a criminal suspect attacked a New Rochelle shop owner and robbed him. I'm not even going to get into the. Every day we have these stories, and there are always several more. You know, and I'll thumb through the Post and some of the other papers later that I didn't get to yet today, and we'll talk about that. But reason needs to prevail. Now, we become such a political society and such a polarized society, it's very hard to get people to consider reason. It truly is. And to make things into racial issues when they're not, even though there may be a racial component to some subset of them, is egregious. To call someone innocent, as this paper did on the front page, before there is a trial, and where we've had senators swear on a Bible to be independent and to be fair-minded. We can't be doing those, but that's what we do. Got a text from someone yesterday I admire greatly, who thinks that we should adhere to the extremes of the right. And then we see in the papers, such as with this bail issue, where the extremes of the left are now prevailing. And that's why you get that reaction. But I've started to work on a writing piece. And again, we haven't put our stuff up yet. And that's on us. It's just so many things to do in starting this new enterprise. But I'm working on a piece called Stasis. If you look in the dictionary, it's about equilibrium. And we have lost that in this country. And we've lost our equilibrium because extremism works. What we're seeing here is if and I'm going to throw the Democrats under the bus again, is if we have a reasonably moderate elected official, he gets or she gets primaried now. So people who are now in office or sitting in office, if they do anything reasonable, they're not far enough to the left. So what they are doing is the same thing that the Tea Party did 7, 8, 10 years ago, whenever it was, and pushing the Democratic Party to the left. And this person that I respect, who I did not agree with, one of his points was that, well, if the left is dominating the party, then we necessarily have to go to the other side. And I understand that. You're giving people a choice. Which side do you want? If there's only two, that's a tough choice. And for those of us who are in the middle, or for those of us who choose our issues based on issues, or at least have a sense of stasis so that we would prefer to see, or balance, or equilibrium, this is a very, very troubling time. And unfortunately, we have created a political class, and maybe we need to look at term limits again. I've always had mixed feelings about that. Maybe what we have to do is deal with a political class that that has a spine, and they don't appear to have that. All righty, he's with us. He's with us each and every day, usually at 7:20, but we'll be talking with Mike Edelman at 7:20, so he's on at 7 o'clock today. The phones are open, but this is a guest. Please welcome Vince Russo. Good morning, Vince.
Hey, Bob. Good morning. Cold out there.
It's. I want to use expletives to tell you how damn cold it is, but boy, it really is.
That's why they call it winter.
Yeah, no, I know, but it wasn't this cold yesterday. I'm supposed to cover this up for the pie. To see that? Look at that. Hello, everybody. I just got to cover this up. See, we have now the split screen. We did more work in the studio, and I don't know this. There we go. That looks pretty. Right now, it's just a blank screen, but then I can put it on that. Can you see this, V? I'm manipulating my mic cameras now. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I can see it.
All right, but there's nobody there. I'm going to pretend.
You should have a picture of me sitting there in the chair.
I don't want to frighten people early in the morning. Well, I don't know if you were listening, but one of my top local stories today, yet another guy who, in fact, this guy actually pled guilty last week to robbing a bank. But they let him out pending, I guess, when they sentenced him. So he robbed a store here in New Rochelle.
But the people who propose this thing will not admit it's not working. They won't admit that it was a ridiculous idea. And it should have been restricted only to people who commit some minor little crime, like smoking a joint or something like that. Not people who commit robberies and things like that.
But there also is a matter of reason. A lot of people who commit robberies or crimes like that who have money get out on bail. So what they should do, again, a reason can always apply. You can say, hey, after 30 days, if you guys don't come up with charges, we're going to let this guy out. Put more pressure on the prosecution. But to carte blanche, let everybody out is nuts. Well, here's the problem.
Sure is.
Someone, and I know her well, and she's a wonderful woman, and it's one of the things that's painful about this job, but I had to throw her under the bus today. Andrea Stewart Cousins, who is believe me, she is the head of the Senate. And the first black woman, and she's the real deal. She's a wonderful, smart, decent human being. But now, yesterday, she was hemming and hawing on whether or not the Senate is going to do anything about it. This cannot stand. And you know why? Because there are now, because of AOC, there is a whole farm team of people that says, hey, look at this. I am to the far left. And it could be, and it's even, which is nice, it's beyond race. Now, it helps if you are a minority. But we have this woman who's now wants to run and challenge a sitting DA. Okay, Ms. Rika. But now get this, she's brilliant. Everybody tells me she's brilliant. But she's already on TV. Do you think this woman really wants to be a DA? She wants to be the next...
She wants to be a TV star.
Yeah, she wants to be the next Janine Pirro. And you know what we have, Vince? We have a guy, and I called him last week. I didn't book him yet. We have a DA who's not interested in doing anything else. He's slightly because he's bookish and interesting. And I've already told him, and it's one of the few times I showed my hand. When I called them, I said, why aren't you guys putting a picture of this woman next to Janine Pirro and say, do you want to do this again? That was psychopath. But again, I understand she's a woman of gravitas that needs to be respected, but I'm just suspect. And I should.
Well, do you You see the latest from this Ocasio-Cortez person? She's contrasting the gun rights rally that took place in Richmond, Virginia, to the riots in Baltimore after the police shot one of these criminals.
Well, that's unfortunate.
And well, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, you know what? There were rumors. Virginia went on a state of emergency. There were rumors that the psychos were going to be out again, but obviously that didn't happen. Are you aware of that?
Didn't happen.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And
I guess Trump told them to stand down.
Yeah, Virginia is trying to pass, all of these anti-gun laws that are, in my opinion, a violation of the Second Amendment. But Cortez says here that, it's the same thing as what happened in Baltimore. Well, it's not. There were no cars overturned. There were no police attacked. There were no stores looted. There were no, things burned. And it's ridiculous to make that comparison. But, of course, things that are ridiculous is second nature to these, to these people that are out there on the fringe. It's crazy.
It is, although, as you know, I do believe in reasonable gun control. I still can't get my head around, and never will, where we register cars, we register other different things. We should register guns to people and know who owns them. I don't think that's unreasonable. But we could argue that till the days come home, and we certainly will again. You're being someone who's very well informed about it. Did you see the headline in the Post? This is why I'm going to getting out of this business, and as soon as I can, I won't be doing politics anymore. What a disgrace. How can we say, it says innocent. By the way, I just got a text that, and I've got to call the back office. Evidently, we're running two streams, and I don't understand how that's happening. But anyway, they said innocent now for the trial. How un-American is that? How un-American is that? And yet the people who support this president wrap themselves in the flag. They paint the flag on and don't even understand what the hell it is.
This whole impeachment thing is a joke. They're going to have this trial. Imagine somebody getting arrested for a crime, going before the grand jury, getting indicted, and then at trial, the jury sits down with the defense and decides beforehand that they're not going to listen to any witnesses and they're not going to hear any evidence.
I know.
How ridiculous is
Well,
this?
You know what it is? It's laying bare a fact that I will grant, and I shouldn't speak for you on it, but that is our system. Unless someone does something so egregious that the party in power in the Senate agrees that they should be removed, they don't get removed. It's as simple as that. Because there is no process for evaluating whether or not a law is broken, because the law was probably broken here, but it doesn't matter when it comes to impeachment. But yet what they should have done is just did a little better job of a show trial, but they can't, because they're trying to, the right here is trying to skate through and wants to fudge and create enough of a fog so that they can still say that it didn't happen. It isn't enough to acquit them. That's not enough for them. And it isn't even enough for them to say we're going to acquit him before the trial, because they don't want to have to converse that, yes, it happened. In fact, they're probably upset with Dershowitz yesterday for having said, well, yeah, but even if he did it, it doesn't rise to the level of a high crime and misdemeanor. So, do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. And, Dershowitz is the biggest whore going.
No, I know that.
He will do anything for an opportunity to be in the spotlight and to make a little bit of cash. During the Clinton impeachment, he was saying, that you don't need a technical crime. I'm reading an article.
I saw it.
I called you. And it says he wasn't wrong about Clinton impeachment, but is far more correct defending Trump. And it's completely crazy.
I used to admire him. God, I'm sorry.
He was saying that in Clinton's trial, if you have someone who completely corrupts the office of president and who abuses trust, and who poses a great danger to our liberty, you don't need a technical crime to impeach. And
he just called for the removal of this president.
yeah, and he says, and then the article goes on to say, now that he's part of Trump's defense team, he argues that, quote, without a crime, there can be no impeachment. So, and then they said to him, well, isn't that inconsistent? Didn't you say one thing and now you're saying another? And he says that he wasn't wrong in 1998 during Clinton's impeachment, that now he just has a more sophisticated basis for his argument.
He's a brilliant guy.
Really nutty.
And I used to admire him, but I told you when it started to break for me, was he, and it was captured in the movie on Netflix about the O.J. Simpson trial. When the Dream Team was getting together, and this was pre-Dershowitz, when they were getting together to discuss how they would defend Mr. Simpson, he was on TV, Fox or whatever it was, every day. This is wrong. He's innocent. He's innocent. He's innocent. I mean, he's guilty. He's guilty. He did it. The evidence is there. He's guilty. So they sat down and they said, what are we going to do? And one guy says, hey, he's an egomaniac. I know what we're going to do. We're going to hire him. So they hired him and he switched sides. But that is the nature. But you see, and that's why it's so important for the center to hold. Because as snarky as I am, I don't like the guy because he's a Larry King or Rudy Giuliani whose time has passed and he's trying to stay relevant. But a lawyer's allowed to do that. It's like the debate team in school. But what cannot happen is that the public and those who would be jurors, whether they be senators or residents or citizens, that center needs to hold. The judge, someone independent, needs to hold. The Dershowitzes get to do this. And I always kid my friend Murray Richmond about it all the time. How come you guys are allowed to lie when we're not lying? Well, how do you know he wasn't on the moon when that man got stabbed? But it is our system. So we've got, I will give Dershowitz that, but I think there's another a little factor here that, do you know every single member of his defense team comes from Fox?
Well, I'm not surprised because they're going to pick people who are in fact, aligned with his position. They're not going to pick somebody who, doesn't go along with that.
No, but any defense attorney knows. Yeah, but there are defense attorneys out there. There's boys. There's some great defense. My friend Murray Richmond Murray once got a guy off and convinced the jury that the man backed into a knife 9 times. Murray's as good as it gets. I kid him about it all the time. And he's also famous for another thing when it comes to murder trials. They're a little easier because there's one less witness. Murray's a beautiful man. He just really is.
How defense attorneys can spin stuff and do all of that in their client's interest. I get it. However, the process should be sacrosanct. The process should be...
That chip is sailed.
It isn't. Well, it isn't. And I think that's the problem. The process, as we go through it, should be, the way it is intended to be, where people, witnesses are called, evidence is presented, and the defense gets to spin it any way they want, and the prosecution gets to, plead their case and try and convince people that a crime was committed and there's reasonable grounds for impeachment. But what the Trump administration wants to do is not have the process.
Well, no. What they want to nullify the process, and it's too late for that. He got impeached. It's a matter of history. And you know what we're really going to find out, though, Vince? When people vote, and this is why the Democrats can't get out of their own way. When people vote next year, we'll know. Now, people who think that it didn't happen, and you work with politicians who say it didn't happen, even though anyone who reads this a little bit knows it happens. Because you can do this by grades. There are the people that say it didn't happen. Then there are people that know it happened and say you can't prove it. And now even the president, how dumb can he be sometimes? He's gloating. See, you couldn't get Bolton to testify. That's like, do you remember in the movie? Oh God, come on, Robert. With about what's his name? The movie about God damn it. I wish my memory would really help me. But at any rate, Robert De Niro plays Al Capone, and he says, "You got nothing because you can't prove it." That's the second tier. Okay.
Yeah.
The Untouchables. Thanks. You got nothing because you can't prove it. All right, and that's fair. But it also is somewhat disingenuous because you're like the cat that ate the canary, and you're saying, you can't prove it because they won't let him speak. And now the president's doing that.
Yeah.
But, and then there are the people that are smart about it, and rightly so, will say, even if he did it, I don't think he deserves to be removed from office. And a lot of people would agree with them. So, but that's how it works. But you know what, though? You know what people will do, and they miss the point, because right now we're supposed to be talking about whether or not the president should be impeached. But now for the larger issue, and it does come out, the larger issue is this. If we continue to do what the far left is doing, like the lunatic that came out the other day and said, no borders, or AOC, the things that she says, and now even people here in Westchester, like Andrea Stewart-Cousins or Hasty from the Bronx, or Heasty, whatever the hell his name is, they don't want to change this law. Well, I look at it and I say, do I want these people in power or do I want Donald Trump in power? That's like going to the electric chair and being asked if I want AC or DC current.
Yeah. Well, it is, he got elected originally and is probably going to get elected again.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I have hope. Let me go on to something else, and I'm sorry I digressed. I have hope that people will find reason, but then when I read the stuff that AOC says, I don't want to vote for a Democrat either. What do you think the New York Times was thinking yesterday?
What? Oh, I have no idea. I mean, I brought that up, and they're endorsing two different people with divergent views of how they would run the country, and it just doesn't seem to make any sense. I'm not exactly sure what they were thinking, and that's why I said the other day that I don't think they're all that relevant anymore. Because they used to be, whether you agreed with them or not, at least very thoughtful and insightful editorials, and when they supported a candidate, it was for good reason. And I think that that time may have passed. You even look at the quality of the journalism, and maybe it's because we're in the electronic age. There's words that are wrong, and paragraphs that just end.
Well, they are you still there? Hello. We lost him.
Vince? No, Bob, I hear you, man.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you were going in and out. The quality of the journalism has dropped, and a lot of it does have to do with, and this has nothing to do with me personally or other people that I know of a certain age, but a lot of it is ageism too. They're getting younger reporters. They're getting younger reporters that don't check out stories, and most of them are coming now out of college. They can't write. They've been texting, so you've got some real issues.
It also goes to the nature of journalism, that in the past you had to triple check the story. One thing you could have relied on with the New York Times was that the facts were checked over and over and over again. They did not say a thing without making sure what they were reporting was accurate. Did they make mistakes? Of course. I mean, they were humans. But now it is just open season. Just write whatever you want. And as you like to point out many times, you'll see a story in the New York Times. The National Enquirer reported today.
Yeah, and you can get away with it. In fact, I remember when I was getting ready to do this for a living, and I went back to school, and they talked about the inverted lead. It's actually a term for it. But now inverted lead, which is supposed to be a no-no, is now stock and trade. I call it the left turn of journalism. Remember when you went to driving school and you were opposing a car in front of you, you both had to make a left, you were supposed to pass the guy? And then,
right.
But no one does that because no one trusts the guy to pass them. And that's what's happened. And that's what's happened with journalism now. Everybody's afraid someone else is going to scoop them. So, I don't know what the answer is. I mean, certainly I'm showing my cards. I know, it's very clear to me because of all the reading I do, because of what I do for a living, that Trump did what he's accused to have done. Okay, and it's fair game to say that it still doesn't meet the standard of taking him out of office. All right, but it just is so troubling that they're trying to pretend it didn't happen. All right, listen, I've got a caller who actually walked into the studio, and we always take. In fact, you can say hello to her, Vince. Did you? How? Good morning. Good morning. We'll say hello to you in a minute. So, Vince, I'm going to take my leave. Thank you very much for calling in this morning.
Okay, Bob, I will speak to you tomorrow.
Oh, and listen, I want to put you on under advisement. We need to talk more. It's just with so much else is going on. You always speak eloquently as a supporter of the Second Amendment, and I don't want you to think I'm dismissing that issue. We just have other orders ahead, as we used to say on Wall Street. Thank you very much. All righty, we have with us right now. Where is my mouse? Everything is black, and I can't tell one black thing against the other black thing. All righty, she's in the house. Good morning, Lorraine. How are you?
Cold.
Oh, it is cold out
I know,
there,
it's
isn't
cold
it?
here,
my
too.
My cookies are cold. I'm in my ears. I was not trying. No, Lorraine, I really wasn't trying. I didn't. I did not mean that the way it came out. This is the problem with being live.
All right. Whatever.
No, I wouldn't have said cookies. I would have said munchkins.
Yes. Okay.
How are you?
I'm fine. I just wanted to say something on one of the Facebook accounts, that's going on.
Yes.
In Rochelle. Someone posted the number of students in the North End schools compared to the South End schools.
Yes.
Right? And the diversity of the North End schools.
Mm-hmm.
But it hasn't gone, to me, far enough because they do not separate out children from Lincoln area that are bused there, because it's my understanding if they wanted to go to Trinity or Jefferson or Columbus, they would not be bused. And also the number of children or students from the South End who are in these schools because of special programs.
Okay.
I think only when that is clear do we really get a true picture of diversity.
Bob Cox was talking about that yesterday, too, at 9 o'clock, the same issue.
Yes, that's an issue. Also, with the development of affordable housing, I want to know what happens to the people in the Lincoln area if they move to one of those developments. Because will they lose the Lincoln Avenue I can't say privilege. That's the wrong thing.
No, but there's all these grants now that are applying on. That's a good question.
If they're still allowed to pick their school or if they're in the district that these developments are in.
Do there's no real answer to this either, because to get full diversity, do we just bus everybody around and do it by numbers? Or do we go to the school that's local and it's easy for you to get to?
We no longer have neighborhood schools, let's face that.
Well, that's...
But I think, because my grandchildren are in White Plains, I think that system, we have to look at that system and the way it works to see if it fits, because I think we're in a 1980 school system or education system, and we're in 2020. We're stuck. We're in a rut.
By the way, guess what?
What?
You're about to be on TV.
Oh, no.
You know what? There she is.
But
Lorraine Carr, do you mind?
No, I don't.
Lorraine Carr came in. You didn't know that? No, we have.
No. Actually, I have to go get a new picture of my ID for Rockefeller University. I lost it. So.
Well, we can print it here for you.
No, I have to go to the security department and all that stuff. So I just wanted to throw that out because I'm not too sure if we're looking at this. I mean, I know the school district does not talk about any of this. Unless they do it privately, I don't know.
Well, sooner or later, with all that you people like yourself have been doing, and Bob and others, they have to get more transparent than they have in the last decade.
I mean, I don't know if they're thinking about it. And I mean, and Al brought up a good point, that someone from the council should be at a...
I heard that.
But they have to change their meeting dates.
Because they're on the same night.
They're all on the same night.
Somebody
has to give.
Yeah. Yes, or one of the councilmen or women needs to be allowed to be free from that other meeting.
Yes, I mean, it's important.
Well, I'm glad you stopped in.
Thank
I
you.
put you on TV.
Thank
I made
you.
you a star.
No, I'm making you a star.
You already did. Thank you
Thank
very,
you.
very much.
Keep
Lorraine,
warm,
Carl, everybody.
Keep warm, and thanks.
All righty. Now I'm going to turn the other camera off, or at least put my little cover over it. Okay. And those of you that have been calling in about the stream, thank you very much. We will get people on that right away. But we go right now to our next guest, political analyst from Florida. Please, well, he's in Florida, but along a Westchester political operative, attorney, ran for Congress. Please welcome Mike Edelman. Good morning, Michael.
Hey, Bob. How you doing?
That's good. Oh, you sound way too upbeat. It's warm down there, isn't it?
No, actually, it's cold. This is going to be the coldest part of the year for us. It's going to be in the low 40s overnight.
Oh,
I got a turtleneck on.
Well, it's 16 right now, and it's even cold in the studio. So today we go, Michael, I don't know if you were listening earlier. I don't know if you're on your phone, but if you're looking at our TV camera here, you can see and I don't know why the Post does this. We need to respect the process. Even if someone, and it just says innocent, now the trial. Even if someone believes that the president shouldn't be, yes, he did this, but he shouldn't be removed from office. We shouldn't be calling him innocent before the trial. It's a mockery of the process.
That's correct. And that's exactly what Alan Dershowitz wants everybody to do, which is precisely the opposite of what Dershowitz said when Bill Clinton was being impeached.
Yes.
He said it doesn't have to be criminal to cause an impeachment. There is a presumption of innocence in a criminal trial, but you can't say he's innocent before you hear the evidence. And if a juror were to be sworn and asked by counsel whether he had an opinion about the innocent or guilt of the defendant, and he said, well, he's innocent, he would be dismissed. And these senators shouldn't be voicing their opinions at all because they swore to be impartial witnesses. They raised their right hand. Chief Justice John Roberts swore them in, and they have an obligation. And as it turns out, this morning we learned that almost 70% of Americans want to hear the evidence. Whether or not they want to remove them, forget about that. That's not relevant. What's relevant is that they have a fair trial and they hear witnesses and evidence, and then they can make whatever conclusion they want.
Mm-hmm. What about Justice Roberts? Now, I know you're a lawyer, not a constitutional attorney, but what is his role? Is he in a position to really have any effect on this anyway? I mean, it doesn't seem like this process, perhaps it shouldn't even have, but it doesn't seem like this process has an independent arbiter of any type.
No, that's correct. And when Hamilton was talking in Federalist 65 about whether or not to have impeachment heard by the Senate or the Supreme Court, he said, we don't want the court to do it because the court will have been appointed possibly by the person who is being tried for impeachment. But the chief judge does control the questioning. It has to be in writing to him and through him. He can rule on admissibility of certain documents and evidence. And unlike Rehnquist, who did absolutely nothing in the Clinton trial and was asked afterwards, he said, well, I did nothing very well. I have a feeling that Roberts may put his gavel in for fairness because the way McConnell is doing this, he wants to have the opening arguments at night. He wants votes to be at night because the arguments don't start till 3 p.m. He's trying to shield the entire trial from the American public. But here's the thing. Unlike when Clinton was president, and certainly unlike when Nixon was president, we have the internet. We have people taking pictures. We have people making recordings. We have ways to find out exactly what's being said. And if 70% of the American voting public wants to hear witnesses, they better be very careful if they don't do that.
Isn't this really all about the next election? Because we know that the Republicans are not going to convict the president. And so this really is a test to see how much information the Democrats can get out there and how much information the Republicans can obstruct. Is that a fair
Exactly
statement?
correct. It's a fair statement that the objective here, in my view, is to make sure that the American public is armed with sufficient information to make a decision in November about whether Donald Trump gets 4 more years. Nobody expects Donald Trump to be removed. That is not going to happen, and it probably shouldn't happen, frankly.
Yeah, I
because
agree with
removal of the president is never, because we decide who leads us in elections. We don't do it by removal. And I have a feeling if for some reason the Senate did remove him, that there'd be violence in the streets in some places. So that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to inform Americans about what's going on, let them make their judgment in November.
Yeah, see, I agree with that. I think the more you read the founding fathers on these topics, et cetera, the reason they said high crimes and misdemeanors, and the reason why even where Mr. Dershowitz is wrong, I think, but where he could have even been more forceful, is that it doesn't even need to be a crime, but it needs to be something, because a statute may not cover something that a president does. It needs to be something so egregious where it's a danger to the republic, such as taking a straight up bribe or something much more heinous. So I don't think he should be removed either. And but what bothers me, and it doesn't the nature of doing this job, is for people to pretend that he didn't do what he's accused of having done. And
they've never. The White House has never said he didn't do it.
Well, he still says it, and then you see.
Well, he says it, but his defense lawyers aren't saying it. But what they're saying is, even if he did do it, it's okay.
Well, one of the things no, it's not okay. Again, I don't think he should be removed, but it's not okay to and then people say, well, other people probably did it. I'm sure they did, but he got caught. I mean, if we only let a guy off every time because someone else did it, we wouldn't have a justice system, which we're going to talk about again in a little bit. Yeah, it's all very troubling. Now, I just wanted to go to the, and it really isn't the other side of this issue, but it's the other side of the political spectrum. It kills me. I love Andrea Stewart Cousins for lots of reasons. But now she and Hasty here in New York are really starting to push back on the fact that people are realizing that this new bail reform law doesn't work. Now, are they that smug and that secure in these jobs, or that worried about someone coming from the far left to take their roles, where they're going to lose a lot of public support, including my own, by the way, and not do something about this? What is wrong with the Democrats?
Well, I think the problem here is that they're using the wrong lever to undo injustice. In other words, they're using the bail law and beating their chests and saying, well, we're eliminating cash bail because minorities have been disproportionately imprisoned as a result of being poor. But that's not the way to solve the problem, because what you're doing is you're placing in danger the entire community by not allowing a judge to exercise this discretion in determining whether or not somebody who's charged with a violent crime, a quasi-violent crime, is a threat to the community. So it's the wrong way to attack the problem. Yeah, if you want to get rid of bail on marijuana cases and bail on little petty misdemeanor shoplifting cases, that's terrific. But when you get into the robbery, assault kinds of crimes, somebody's got to be in there making a determination. I'm sorry.
No,
the system doesn't work unless there's a check on violence.
But because you know what? When you take the AOCs and you take now Omar the other day came out and said we shouldn't have any borders, we shouldn't have any ICE. This stuff, what it does, it gets people on the right and even in the center right crazed.
Yeah, but we've always had extremists in the United. We had Joe McCarthy.
No. I understand that, but again, as someone who I think one of the problems that the right has had with respect to the behavior of the president is that people within their ranks won't speak up. And I think that what's becoming disappointing is on the left, we're seeing the same dynamic. I mean, here's a woman that's just risen to the top job in the Senate, and if she doesn't open her mouth soon, I'm going to be ripping her up every day on these microphones. And I'm a guy that supported her, would have voted for her, think the world of her, but now I don't. Or at least, unless, and I understand that the pains of politics, and maybe she doesn't want to be primaried by somebody from the far left, but that's too bad. Integrity's got to matter.
I totally agree with you. And people that are operating because they're safe and secure in a gerrymandered district, okay, and they don't fear a challenge from the other party. That's why these gerrymandered districts, whether they're in New York or whether they're in Virginia, are bad. Because they're playing to one side. They're not playing to their constituents.
Yeah, and Michael, where I'd like to think this. We all think we have things that give us bona fides, but where I have a bit of an edge on some other commentators. See, I come from the working class that built a life up to the middle class. I come from that hard-working, blue-collar background, and many, many, many of my friends, who unfortunately I fight with all the time because of my own political positions, but at least there's not enmity in it. But I understand where they're coming from. And they'll say to me, but Bob, look at AOC, look at these people. You want to vote for them? And of course my answer is, hamina, no.
Okay, and let me just address that.
Yeah.
AOC and those people are exceptions, not the rule. The majority of Democrats are center-left Democrats.
Well, they better start speaking up.
Chris Coons, Joe Biden, Amy Klobuchar, even Pete Buttigieg. These people are slightly left of center. They're not nuts. So I can point out people in the Republican Party like Jim Jordan, who was just appointed to the defense team, unfortunately.
Oh, that's psycho?
That are nuts as well.
Yeah. They put him on the defense team? Well, he's just...
Yeah, along with Mark Meadows and that whole host of people. Collins, he did it against the advice of John Cornyn and the other senators who didn't want any part of a circus. Now there'll be a circus if they're allowed to cross-examine and participate. I don't know if he just put them on to put them on, window dressing, but they're on.
But you know what? But doesn't this say something terrible about the American people, though? Because where are the people of gravitas? Where are the James Bakers? Where are and I'm talking Republicans now, where are these people? Where are the Condoleezza Rices? Where are these people of gravitas and heft? Where'd they go?
They went bye-bye because these heavily gerrymandered congressional districts and these states that are either red or blue force them to take a position before they see any evidence or see any documents or hear any evidence. It forces them, even Susan Collins. So you've got 5 or 6 senators that are going to make this or break this in terms of witnesses. Cory Gardner, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Mitt Romney, Lamar Alexander, Tom. These people are either in safe seats, retiring, or in
I understand.
No,
but even in terms of defense lawyers for the president, he has all these people that are, and I don't mean puppets in the sense that they do what they're told. I'm talking about their caricatures. Right. Where are the David Boyces and the great defense attorneys in America? Where are the Bennetts, the Bill Bennetts?
Donald Trump doesn't want great defense attorneys. He wants television personalities. That's what he picked. Ken Starr, Alan Dershowitz. He picked people that defend him on TV. It's all about TV. It's not about the law. He has no idea what the law is. He has no idea why he's being impeached.
Did you hear Did you hear what so and so? I keep forgetting his name, and I don't know. I think I'm getting old. Well, I am getting old, but what his former advisor said, the guy from Breitbart, the guy that was in the White House for a while.
Steve Bannon. Bannon.
Did you hear what he said the other day in Paris?
Yeah, he said Nancy's an assassin.
No, but he said, doesn't anybody realize it's not about the Democrats? It's not about anything. It's about the press. The enemy is the press. The enemy is the media. That's how you win or lose.
Yeah, because the media reports facts, Bob. Let me ask you something. Just one thing I want to make a point. When you watch Fox News journalists, okay, they report exactly the same facts as MSNBC, CNN, NBC, and CBS. Why is that?
Because those are the facts.
Because facts don't change.
Right.
And Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh and that group, they aren't dealing with facts. They're dealing with spin. And there's a difference.
Well, in those two instances, they actually collude with the candidate. So it's not even. I won't waste my breath anymore listening to either of those two people. I've not listened to. I've listened to one sentence from Rush about a year ago. I just can't. I can't. Anyway,
well, they're shilling.
So where does this go? Do you think we'll get witnesses or not?
The big question is the witness question. That's the big question.
Yeah.
When they get to that, this is going to be extremely exhausting because it's going to start at 3 and go to midnight or 1 in an effort. McConnell doesn't want anybody to see. He doesn't realize that the reporters for these networks are going to be up covering it, okay, no matter what time it goes. And the question will be, do we see Lev Parnas, John Bolton, Mick Mulvaney, and the other White House characters that knew exactly what President Trump wanted out of Zelensky and whether or not he personally ordered that money withheld? We all know he did, okay? But we need to hear proof for those 42% of Americans that want Trump to stay in office, which he will. But when it comes to voting, if they learn the truth, they'll vote him out.
Well, we shall see. Michael, thank you very, very much. Mike Edelman, we know you won't be on the golf course today because it's cold. We have to go to our next guest, Mike Duffy. We have a lot to talk about with him, including the impeachment. But first, we do need to share with you some of these other factors, like maybe the weather. All righty. It's now 21, not much better than it was. It was 16 when we started the show. It's 21 degrees, getting up to 34 today, and it'll be sunny all day, but cold. And but it's going to level off at 30. You won't see 34 till maybe the height of the afternoon, and then it'll dip right back down. Indeed, tonight, partly cloudy, cold. Seasonable lows around 18 degrees. Tomorrow, sunny, not as cold as today, with highs around 38. Tomorrow night, mainly clear with lows near 24. Thursday, sunny skies, a high of 42. Still cold, still below freezing at night. Friday, a heat wave. 44 degrees during the day. That'll be the average, getting down to 32 at night. Tomorrow we'll get into this a little more. They're looking at perhaps another winter storm come Saturday. And the bottom of the hour is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, their partners, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. You're listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I'm Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, the train station radio station, or better yet, the radio station at the train station. Now, we've understand that some people have been getting 2 feeds. We're trying to figure out why that's happening. We will look at that, but we will get that fixed. But now we go to our next guest. He's so useful in so many ways to this broadcast. Not that we just use him up, but Mike Duffy's a very fine defense attorney. He has run for political office in the Republican Party. He is, or has been, an investigator, the head of investigations for the DA's office. He's been a detective and a cop on the beat, and we value him greatly for all those reasons. Please welcome Mike Duffy. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
Oh, interesting, all this stuff going on. But I'm going to I know I start with this every week, but it's really sticking in my craw. What is wrong with the Democrats? What's wrong with Hasty? What's wrong with Andrea Stewart Cousins, a woman who generally speaking, I've admired? Why are they sticking to their guns on this bail law?
Well, you got to give it to the Democrats, Bob. They stick together on issues. Now, this is a public safety issue. There's obviously things that have to be changed in this Bail Reform Act that New York has. And, some Democrats say, yes, there are changes that need to be made. But Hasty turned it down last week or the week before, and they're just dead set against any type of change. Well, I don't know why. I mean, defies common sense when you see what's happening.
Well, they're all afraid of being. They're all afraid of being, I guess, primaried by left-wing nuts. And it's just It's really disappointing. I mean, here, because it's prima facie. It's every day we're seeing these cases. We had one now. I don't know if you saw the news today. We had a case here in New Rochelle. A guy actually pled guilty to robbing a bank, but he's still out on appeal or bail until he gets sentenced.
Yeah.
And he broke into a bodega. Politics in our country is I either go to one extreme or another. Whatever happened to reason? Well, it's not that you have the answers, Michael.
I don't know, Bob. Look what's happening nationwide. Yeah. I mean, it's not just New York State.
No, I know.
It's nationwide. It's both parties are at each other hammer and tong, and it's what we have to deal with for now. Now, I don't see how you can be irresponsible and to the detriment of your citizens, if you extend one way or the other to the extreme. I don't see how anybody with common sense thinks that's good for anybody.
Well, you know why? And I do understand it. I don't agree with it. It's like someone who said to me, I think I'm fair to Donald Trump, and I wouldn't remove him from office over this, but I'm not the biggest fan. But still. One of my frequent calls, smart guy too, said yesterday, well, look at what choice do I have? Am I going to vote for Elizabeth Warren? What was by the way, what was the New York Times thinking yesterday?
Well, that's what it comes down to. What choice do I have? Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that, Bob. Yeah. You said the New York Times endorses two people. I mean, that's an endorsement for no one then. They're different individuals. They have different thoughts on different issues. So that's it in a nutshell, really, isn't it? That's just craziness, I think.
But see, whereas they did a poll a couple of weeks ago. It's kind of interesting. Most of the country is still center right, but center right. And that's why I rue the day that guys like Kasich and others didn't do a good job when they were running, because those are the kinds of people that they want someone sensible. They don't want someone to the far right. They don't want someone to the far left. They want someone sensible. Are we asking too much?
But then you get on the East Coast and the left coast, and people have a different viewpoint. I mean, look what's happening to the cities on the East Coast, left coast, I would say, which is the West Coast, a derogatory term for the West Coast. But Portland, Seattle, all those cities, they're going downhill fast, and the crap, literally, that people have to put up with that live there. I was in San Francisco probably 3-4 years ago, and back then we had people chasing us down the street and things like that, right in the middle, Market Street, right downtown San Francisco. Now it's really gone downhill after that.
You know what I like about Seattle, and this is just how I'm wired. In Seattle, the homeless there, what's kind of cool about it, they actually will set up their tents and sit in front of iconic buildings. So that, like we're in New York City, at least they're smart enough to be hypocritical. In New York City, they keep their homeless in the periphery or roaming around. You don't see them in front of the Empire State Building. You don't see them in front of Trump Plaza. You don't see them in front.
Yeah, you don't see them on Wall Street.
You don't see them in Tiffany's. Well, you might in some of the down by the water. But what I get a kick out of in Seattle, and it's working, and it's not. Well, it's working because I'm so cynical when it comes to this in a good way, I think. It's working because the people of Seattle now are ready to pony up money to build affordable housing for the homeless, because what they're doing is they're soiling their main streets. In other words, if you flew into Seattle right now, take me to your landmarks. You can have homeless people sitting right in front of them. It's a beautiful thing.
Right. Well, downtown White Plains, where you have the gallery at Marrone Business District, they have a 7-Eleven at Court Street and Martine Avenue, and everybody was hanging out there that purportedly was going to get on a bus but never got on the bus and stood there and caused problems and soiled the streets and everything. So the owner, I just noticed this the other day, says, nobody's standing here anymore. What happened? To myself, I'm saying this because I pass by there every day walking to court. And what the owner of 7-Eleven did, and it's ongoing day by day. It's still I was there yesterday. The guy is piping opera music to the outdoors right in front of his building.
Good for him.
And nobody will stand there and listen to this stuff. So I had read about someplace doing that. I forget where it was. But this guy, this owner, took it upon himself, and he's doing that. And you know what? It's working. So
what a beautiful idea. I've got to remember.
There are methods, I guess.
Again, my guest is Mike Duffy. Now, the other side of this, too, and this is where both political parties are failing the public. A lot of this has to do with people not getting the right education, how we deal with mental illness, how we deal with homelessness, how we deal with income inequality. There have to be ways that are sensible, not extreme. We can't give away the world, but on the other hand, we need to take care of people who are mentally ill.
Plus families too, Bob.
Yeah.
Family support.
Oh, huge.
I mean, God, I hate to even say this, but it looks like it's all coming crashing down with these wild, really outrageous ideas that are happening. Where I don't know. I'm actually speechless at this point because the things that are allowed, and then you have the other side, the things are not allowed because depending on who's in office. You can't say this. You have to use a certain pronoun. You read a story now, you don't even know who the heck they're talking about. Is it a male? Is it a female in the story?
Well,
I mean, come on.
There was a story the other day. It may have been in the Post. It actually may have been in it was in the Week magazine, which is an apolitical aggregator. And this is an interesting story because it was a female civil rights group, okay, which was pretty cool. It was a feminist group, and you gotta like that, feminist group, and they were forbidden from from doing a report at a college. And do you know why? Because they want, even though they're feminists and push all that, even though they're feminists and push all that, that is important to the Me Too movement, etc. They want to, they still want a woman to be defined as someone who is genetically a woman. And it seems to me that that's their right to say that because it's definitional. It's a question of language. And they were forbidden from speaking at a specific college.
Right. And it's such a small minority of people who are really protesting this stuff. I mean, honestly, Bob, I was reading the story. I don't remember if it was in the LOHUD, the Journal News, or what. It was a local paper, but they're talking about they. And I'm like, well, wait, he started out with the story, an individual did this, and then they, and then I'm thinking, well, there's more than one person involved because it says they, and they're all referring to one person. And then I read another story in another paper, the same incident, and it was one guy did whatever this incident was, and it was clear. Oh, this guy did this, he did that, he did, but in the other article, you couldn't tell if it was a male, it was a female, if it was multiple people that committed this offense.
You're singing my song. Don't mess around with language. These are issues of language.
Isn't that the purpose of language, to make us understand things?
Yes. No. Well. Let me tell you and this is what I enjoy about my show. If I may be, pat myself one time on the back. I throw the hard right on the left on the bus a lot, but I've been having a lot of fun throwing the left on the bus because the left actually gets tangled up in its own feet. I'll give you an example. They'll rant and rave about cultural appropriation, okay? But then they'll say you can define yourself as any sex you want. Well, which is it? If I want to play jazz music, okay, now I'm culturally appropriating a black person. If I want to teach yoga, I'm culturally appropriating Chinese culture. I can't even do something, but yet if I happen to say right now that I am a non-gender, you're supposed to accept that, even though God gave me equipment and genetics that says I am a male. Now, If I am gay, I want to be respected. If I go transgender, I want to be respected. But I want to be respected for that. I'm not demanding, I'm not demanding that you change your language to suit me.
Yeah, but some people are, and some groups are. But it's minute. But because of social media, it and the liberal media, now I sound like Trump, but it explodes across the media spectrum. And people read this, oh, yeah, that's the way it should be, and then these people, and by these people, I mean anybody espousing a certain viewpoint, get out there, they're loud, they're vociferous, and it gets into social media even more, and it's like a downhill spiral.
It really is. And then you get the reaction, and you might not like this, but then you get Fox News that goes the other way. So
I don't think anybody should go the other way, whether it's Fox News, and I said this about 10 years ago to somebody. They should have a news channel, and they should call it The News, and just, even though Walter Cronkite, show my age, but he had a liberal bent, but he never showed it.
Yes.
And the news back then was the news. The Times actually wrote on. The Washington Post is just a creature of Bezos. I mean, that's obvious. Yeah. The writers are horrendously, tilted to the left. I mean, if you want to buy the Washington Post and read that, fine. You want to buy the Times, and if you want to watch Fox News, fine.
Yeah, read them all.
There should be factual news out there. And factual news should be the same thing, but they're not. And a lot of these people are not news people; they're opinion people.
Yeah.
I heard Mike talking about it, or Rachel Maddow is an opinion. That's not a news show.
Right. That's right.
That's an opinion show. And so is Sean Hannity.
Right.
That's opinion.
I agree with you. Well, you know what?
But I mean, Bob, I'm sorry to cut you off. But where are we going to get our news from? Our real news is going to get to a point where you got to go out and find it for yourself, or
well, unfortunately, yeah. And although you know what happens, though, I will, as someone who does this, okay, I will spend hours, and family doesn't like it. My other half doesn't like it, and I said, but I read hours and hours of stuff so that I can. Like if I'm making a statement, I've really done my homework, but we have so many people in the country because of what you're talking about who only want to believe what confirms their bias, that there's a part of me that, when I say want to get out of the business, I don't mean totally get out of it, just do a different kind of radio. The truth doesn't matter. I could sit here, I could have the Pope sitting next to me.
No, you and I have been to situations where we saw a certain event multiple times. I know you have, I have, and then you read an account of it, and you say, "That's not what happened."
No, and it's heartbreaking. It really is. And look, we all have our biases. When I'm putting the news together in the morning, like the other day, I did a story, and it was really complimentary to the president. And I know I talked off my people aren't the people that listen on the left, but it was a true story. He did something that worked out well. The NAFTA agreement that people are saying, even people on the left out in the zeitgeist, are saying that the deal that he just cut, okay, here in North America was better than NAFTA. And
right, unanimous on that,
right,
across the board.
No, but here's my point. I put it in the news. Now there's a part of you that says, boy, should I be, I mean, I didn't do it, but there's a part of me that's this little devil that says, boy, I'm going to be giving this guy president. I think he's bad for the country. That's not my choice. That's my choice or it shouldn't be my choice. When I'm doing my opinion parts, I can say, look, he's done some good things, but on balance, I think, but you've got to give these people their credit. And people on the right and left don't want to do it. I mean, there's a story I did the other day. I got it right here. You want to hear it, Michael?
Sure.
Here's another story I cut out. Now, I'm just going to deliver it straight. Now, you want to see people circle this radio station with torches from the right? Are you ready?
Sure.
The Justice Department has ended a 2-year investigation into Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation without finding anything improper. And this was reported last week in 2006.
Yeah, I saw that. Yep.
Yeah, but here's my point. Do that story, and people will call me up and say I'm pandering to Hillary Clinton. I mean, we've created these people that are cartoons of themselves. Hillary Clinton, I'm not crazy about her either, but she's not quite the monster that she's been made
And
out.
I saw that story, Bob, and you know what my reaction was when I read that story?
What?
oh, well, they had an investigation, and I guess that's it. And God's honest truth, that was my reaction to it. And hopefully, it had been investigated properly. And then, so be it. I mean,
have I
if
ever
that's
told
the truth, then that's it then. Put it to rest.
Have I ever told you what some people believe? I think if I didn't tell you this story, these people don't know what they're talking about when they tell you this anyway. Where are they getting this information from? They get it from the internet.
Right.
I tell you when I was...
They don't have personal knowledge of this.
I took my grandson to play hockey. I was actually coaching his junior team about 4 years ago. And some very nice women, but there were some housewives from Staten Island. And they came up to me, we heard you do political radio. Is it true that Michelle Obama's a man?
Boy.
Now, see, now what am I supposed to do? Poke
You're
my
supposed
eyes
to run
out?
away at that point. I think.
And these are good, decent people from middle-class families who struggled and built lives, and I don't want, but that's insane. But a lot of people believe it.
Yeah, I know.
In fact, there was a story the other day I saw online, someone forwarded to me, that there's going to be a breaking story any day that she's transgender. Anyway, let's get into a couple of other things. I want to have some fun with one of your other professions, and I know we're running out of time. It's 7:58. We're talking with Mike Duffy, and you're a defense attorney. Now, I've kidded you about it. I kid my friend Murray Richmond about it. But how much license does a defense attorney have to say, how do we know that Bob Marrone wasn't on the moon when this time took place? And doesn't a judge ever say, geez, how far are you going to go? How much latitude does a defense attorney have?
Well, it's funny you asked that. I was in a trial, and very sharp judge in White Plains, Judge Hansberry, since retired.
Contradicting in terms.
The best. And it was a jury trial, and the DA was doing a good job, and I thought I was doing a good job. But bottom line, I got to blow my own horn. I got an acquittal on it. But
that's my man.
Now that I think of it, but I had this witness that was really being obstreperous. He was like, anything you said, he was coming back at you, and he just wouldn't cooperate. And I knew the answer to the question, right? So the old adage, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to.
Yeah.
I knew the answer, but I just couldn't get it out of this guy. He was really being a pain in the butt.
Go ahead.
And then I said, well, listen, isn't it possible that, and Diego's objection, I knew that was coming, right, objection. And Judge looks at me and he smiles, he goes, Mr. Duffy, anything is possible. So that's what he should have done, and he did it. And, I got my point another way. Maybe, I don't remember, it was about 5 years ago, through another witness or something. But that's the judge is if you have a jury, the judge is not the finder of fact. He's the one who makes rulings on the law. And that's exactly the situation I was in. And, so be it.
Good for him.
The judge does have to be a monitor of what goes on. And there's good judges. And I use this judge because he was a stellar judge. And there's judges... Well, I'm going to allow that. They're scared to make a certain record, some of the judges, for whatever reason. And either they don't know the law, or for whatever reason they do this. So I'm not, I'm going to allow it. I'm going to allow it. You're like, they're wrong. And the DA will confer later, and they'll go, they will say to you, oh, I thought he was going to side with you on that. I said, well, so did I.
Mike, this is great. My guest is Mike Duffy. I'm going to keep you another couple of minutes after class if you can, because I want to tell you a story apropos of this on the light side, because you're making my day. Just the fact that you talk reasonable is such a wonderful thing. It is 8 o'clock. My guest is Mike Duffy. He's a defense attorney. He also has been on the other side as the chief investigator for the DA's office here in Westchester County, cop on the beat and a detective. When you mentioned the word obstreperous, do you know what? And I have a photographic memory for certain things, and it's whenever I learned a word, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's not easy to say.
No, it's not. But I remember when Sister Georgina Louise in the 5th grade called me obstreperous. Or when I gained 15 pounds, and do you know what my own mother has called me? My mother had a great vocabulary, which is probably why I do this, and a very smart woman. I gained some weight, and I'm leaning over in the kitchen. Well, you know, when you're hanging around family at a Christmas dinner. She pats me on the belly, and she says, I see we're getting corpulent. Thanks, Mom. I forget what else I did. You know, she says, you know, Robert, which is what I'm known as in my family. She said, you're a reprobate. Mom, please. Reprobate.
Yeah.
I mean,
Reprobate was one of my father's favorites.
Isn't it funny, though, that you'll learn a word? Like, do you know when I learned the word ubiquitous? During Watergate. Remember Sam Urban called John Dean ubiquitous. You seem to be everywhere. The ubiquitous Mr. Dean.
Yeah, nobody's perfect. You know, I see words in legal writing. You're supposed to get more towards the common language now, and not with the legal terms.
Yeah, I know.
But I'll read papers, and I'll rush to Black's Law Dictionary because I don't want to be a knucklehead, and I don't know what that word is. So
no, but my mother would just
process.
always use it to insulate. She'd always use it to hit me. I still, to this day, if someone pats me on the stomach for any reason, I think of 40 years ago, my own mother calling me corpulent.
You think you're getting corpulent again? Yeah. So, well, Sister Alice in 5th grade, she she grabbed me by the hair around my ears and pulled it up, where your sideburns are supposed to be when you're a little older, and pulled that up, and she goes, "Mr. Duffy, you're a nasty little man." And I'm like.
Did she know that you were going to go up to be 60?
Things you don't forget, right? So.
No, it is funny. I remember that. Well, that same nun once. I always mention the guy's name because it's 60 years ago, and God knows if he's still alive. His name was Dominic DeAmbra. And we're on. Remember that we used to have to be online in the hall,
Sure.
with your fingers on your lips and stuff. And we're online, and she was a tough nun. And we used to call her Cannonball, God bless her. But she was good and a great teacher. Anyway, for reasons unbeknownst to me, he used the F word. And he was standing behind me. Guess who Sister Georgina Louise thought did it? Me.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
That happened a lot.
What a crack in the head I got. I think she also called me bold.
And it didn't matter if you were the innocent guy. They had to make a point.
Right.
I saw that a lot. Yeah, the wrong person getting whacked.
Did you go to Catholic high school as well?
Yes.
Where'd you go?
I went to Archbishop Stepanak in White Plains.
Oh, great school. I went to Bishop Ford, and I had great education from the family. Great. I
knew the reputation when I went there because my brother went there. He had graduated the year before and then was out, and he was over in Vietnam. But my first day of class, and it's a very short anecdote, there was a priest there in homeroom, Father Ed, and this was the very first day in class. And we're all in homeroom, and somebody who came from my school, because they drew from all over Westchester and the Bronx, but a guy that I went to St. John the Evangelist in White Plains.
That
he was
my
sitting
grammar
next
school.
to me.
Go ahead.
And he made some remark, and this priest, Father Ed, came over and literally picked him up out of his desk and threw him over the next desk. And I was like, okay, I guess my brother was right that this stuff happens here. But, back then it was expected.
No.
And, and you know that too, Bob. It was expected.
I had a brother,
to get whacked in the hall.
Brother
if you were late
Carmine.
to class, what are you doing in the hall?
Are you kidding? We had a brother Carmine, 6'6", about 280, played college football. And a kid badmouthed him in class. And, they had those tall desks. He pushed the desk out of the way with one hand. And I went, eep! And he attacked. He went after this guy. He dragged him out into the hallways. And all you could hear was the locker slamming. Kaboom. Oh, my God. Now, my favorite was, and I loved science. And I every once in a while, you didn't do your homework or whatever. And I do a really good imitation. And I say this with love, peace, and respect, but he's pretty funny. And Brother DeMarin is single. And I hope I can get the whistle right with my tongue. I have to be up for a while. Mr. Marrone, would you like to clean the rat cages after school? Because you didn't finish the work in your earth science workbook, Mr. Marrone.
And Bob, none of this stuff went home. You didn't go home.
Oh no, I didn't complain.
And if you did, your parents would have said, "Well, what'd you do?" Then you deserved it.
Well, that's and you really did. Guess I got to clean the rat cages because I let some frogs out. I didn't like the way some kids were pithing frogs. I thought it was cruel. So I opened up their cage. and there were about six frogs hopping around the first floor of Bishop's Floor. Mr. Marrone, you'll clean the rat cages for a week. I have great memories, though. That's great education from those brothers, man. Let me tell you.
Well, some people are listening to us going, "What the hell are they talking about?"
It's a different time, and I just had to lighten it up because I know you have a similar background to mine, except I didn't become a copper.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure a lot of people in your school too. You became a cop, a priest. You went in the army. You whatever. And
did I ever tell you?
And then the kids in the top classes all became doctors.
Well, yeah, but did I ever tell you that the toughest cop on my beat? I played in this really great hockey league in Brooklyn. And it turned out I go to show up to play in this league, and there he is, Tommy Doyle. Oh, my God. He used to smack me in the back of the head in the street. What are you doing in the street? Does your mother know you're here? And then one day, and it's funny, I think I told you, we got hurt in the same hockey game, and we were in the emergency room at the same time. I says, whatever happened to your partner? We used to call them Whitey and Rocky. They were our neighborhood cops. We knew them.
Yeah, well, I tell you, to get back to the more serious topic is, you're right, Bob. When I was first out on the street in patrol in uniform, we had foot posts all around the city of White Plains. And you know what? You owned the street. You didn't let stuff take place on your post that shouldn't. And if somebody's laying around creating a mess, you got that person moving. If they needed help, you got them help. But now there's no overseeing of any type of activity out there.
No, and they knew your parents. They knew our parents, man. They were tough cops. Hey, listen.
You knew your post. You knew what these kids were doing, not supposed to be doing. Either way, and you acted accordingly. There's none of that anymore.
No, it's a different time. Well, Mr. I should do it. I can't do it when I want to do it on purpose. But Mr. Duffy, would you like to clean the rat cages after the show?
Master
Duffy. Oh, I was called Master Marrone. Sure, I was. Hey, listen, Mike Duffy, defense attorney. Thank you so much.
And the poor kid with the last name Bates had a problem, right?
Oh, I could get into that. We'll do that for another day. Listen,
Catholic school joke. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very, very much.
All right,
hey, wait. Did you play basketball in high school at all?
I did not.
Because you have the
I actually do not like the game of basketball, so sorry.
Well, okay, fine.
So.
I guess I went down the wrong avenue. All right, thank you so very much, Mike Duffy, everybody, and we're going to talk. Take care. We're going to talk with our own because he doesn't know that our cameras are really working well now. Now, many of you have written to me and called me and said, Bob, what does Jake look like? This is our own Jake. You should get to know him. Jake Schaefer, of course.
Now, who writes these letters?
Hold on, let me put this in. Jake, how are you? No, I get emails and texts all the time. But and you, of course, do the ones that the questions to me.
We'll have a brand new batch tomorrow.
Well, yes, but anyway, I just wanted to talk with you a few minutes about something that's going to happen tonight in sports, which is the Hall of Fame. And I shared with folks early today. Now, as you know, Jake is the soothsayer of Jake's Picks of the Week. He also is our in-house sports guru, and who more and more will be doing the interviews when we have on our other sports guests who come on, the Callises and the others. But who do you like for the Hall? And let me get this out again, if I may, because people respect your opinion. Heck, you're 23 and whatever it is now.
Had a good football season.
Okay, here
What
it
are you
is.
more fascinated by, if Jeter gets the 100% or if Bonds and Clemens finally get in?
Oh.
And Schilling.
Okay, I'm much more
Schilling's
fascinated.
a different question, though.
No, I did comment on that today, and I'm glad you brought it up. First of all, I think I've so changed on this. Bonds and Clemens should get in. They were great before they did steroids, and until you out everybody who did steroids, what baseball needs to do is of all the sports, they need a reboot.
They've counted the votes already. They've counted the votes that have been
Well, at
sent
least
in
by
already.
these writers, yeah.
And so right now you need 75% to get in. Schilling is at 79.
He deserves it. Oh, look, I know he's a political nut, but that shouldn't matter. He's a great ball player. Who
Bonds
cares?
is at 72, and Clemens is at 71. So explain to me, please, how could a writer vote for Bonds but not Clemens, or Clemens but not Bonds? I don't understand.
Well, at least
that
here in the
rationale.
Post, though, they were consistent. All the writers there that voted for
No,
Barnes
but
were for-
there's
you
a
have the
discrepancy
overall,
between
yeah.
Bonds and Clemens by 1 percentage point.
DK, I think. Or who was a little better? Which of the two? got more?
Bonds by 1 point.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
How could you vote yes for Bonds, no for Clemens?
I mean, Clemens won 7 Cy Youngs.
If you're going to allow one steroid guy in,
And neither of them was a very nice person, so who cares? They were both miserable humans. Well, actually, Bonds, they say off the rink, so to speak, was a nicer guy. Clemens clearly, school wasn't a big factor for him. But I did want to go to Kurt Schilling. He absolutely, he was a great pitcher. Who cares about his politics? This country's got to get out of the political thing. I don't care if he's to the left of,
there's KKK members in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, God, yeah. But then you're going to the different extremes. Some of the surprises for me were Larry Walker. I don't even know who he is.
Yeah, he was a great hitter for the Rockies. He'll get in.
Okay, well, yeah, they've got him. Now, the guy that seems to be paying a price for having been doing steroids is Sosa. What did you think of Sosa? I remember when he was hitting all those home runs, but he didn't do much else.
Well, that hearing, remember that big hearing? He
Yeah.
didn't do himself any favors when he forgot how to speak English. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So I don't think that did him any favors.
I don't think Sheffield belongs in the Hall. I think he's one of those really good ball players. I know Yankee fans get annoyed when I say this, but I don't think Andy Pettit's a Hall of Famer.
I agree.
I think he's a very good ball player. Now, Jeff Kent.
Jeff Kent I like a lot, and Andrew Jones I like a lot.
Now, Andrew Jones, even when he was playing, I remember when he came to the Yankees towards the end of his career, it just goes to show you how some guys just don't get press. They went on and on and on about what a great outfielder he was.
He might have
And then
been the
I looked at
best
his
outfielder I've ever seen.
Yeah, and then I'd look at the numbers, and he would hit 300 every year no matter where he was.
He's got
How
over
do guys like
400
that
home
fly
runs.
under the right radar?
Just forgotten about.
And was it where he played
Played
before
in
he came to
Atlanta,
the Yankees?
played in the shadow of he played in the shadow of the steroid guys.
Yeah. Now, let's get to Derek Jeter. Okay. I guess he's going to go in unanimously, but would he go in unanimously if he didn't play in New York?
No.
Okay. I don't know what it is. There's just something about him, as you know, that rubs me the wrong way. And
I mean, he's a Hall of Famer, obviously.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
is
no,
he
no,
the
no,
best
no.
baseball player of all time?
No.
Should he be the second? I think Mariano should not have gotten 100% either. That's
Well, actually,
crazy.
I did, only because, and not because he's here in New Rochelle, only because he was so. I mean, he just never had a bad year. I mean, never had a bad year. Never.
Yeah, but look at the names that didn't get 100%. Is he better than Nolan Ryan? Is he better than Sandy Koufax? Is he better than...
I could. Well, Nolan Ryan was for several years mediocre, and he was great over a long period of time, and he walked a lot of batters. But I love Nolan Ryan, but I don't think. See, the thing about Mariano that struck me, I mean, even his last year, I mean, he was like some sort of a machine as a relief pitcher, and a lot of the others that made it to the Hall of Fame. As pitchers, no one has ever been as consistent as him as a relief pitcher. I mean, even I'm trying to think of some of the other names that escape me because my brain is melting. But I've never seen anybody as complete. But who knows? That's to get every single vote. But now, what about Manny Ramirez? I thought he was a better ball player than.
Well, when they start letting the steroid guys in, he'll skate into the Hall of Fame. And
who is Scott Rowland?
Scott Rowland was a great third baseman, but very good player, not a Hall of Famer.
Okay. Let's see. Brandon, Todd Helton, Jeter, Manny.
So I did a little research.
All right. Let me see what you got. Tell me what you got.
75% to get into the Hall of Fame. So here are the dregs of the Hall of Fame, the lowest vote count. The lowest guy in is a guy named Al Simmons. He got 75.38. After that is Ferguson Jenkins. Do you remember him?
Sure do. 5 20-game seasons in a row. Black pitcher from Canada. Very good pitcher.
He got in by the skin of his teeth. Third lowest, which really surprised me.
I thought Ferguson should have made it earlier, but
third lowest is Ralph Kiner. Never saw him play, but I always had read that he was a great player.
He was a great home run hitter.
He just got 75.41. Fourth lowest, which is very surprising, is a guy named Cy Young.
Why?
I have no idea.
Well, I think they were just much more stringent then. I mean, now in all the big sports, you don't know half the people in the Hall of Fame.
He only got 76.12. Then Ryan Sandberg. That surprised me a little bit. He was a great player.
He was a great player.
And then Catfish Hunter. These are the dregs of Cooperstown.
You know what's interesting about Catfish Hunter? I thought he was a better pitcher than Moose. But yet Moose was a little more consistent always. Now I have mixed feelings about Moose, and I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I have a mental disability of some sort because I rooted for Moose because I liked that he was a smart pitcher, but I was surprised when he got elected to the Hall. You look at his record, 250 wins or whatever it was, my God, some people just sneak up on you like that.
Very similar to Pettit.
Career much more consistent. And
I mean, their lifetime stats,
Pardon?
Their lifetime stats, wins, ERA.
But yeah, but then again, I was surprised he made it into the Hall. What other things are interesting from your stats? You did some homework. What else is interesting?
I just can't wait to see if Bonds and Clemens get in. Because if they get in, then does McGuire get in? Does Sosa get in? Manny gets in. Ortiz is definitely going to get in.
Oh, Ortiz deserves to be in. He
was on that list.
No, I know, but here again, these guys are just. I just want to be sure. No, look at you. There he is. I just want to be sure that I understand which guys belong in there. Hockey's just as bad. Hockey now, it used to be only the Gordie Howes were in there. Now, if you play 1,000 games and you get 500 goals, you're going to be in. And maybe you should be, but I don't know. I don't think it should just be statistics. Now, I think where they need to fix this is with Pete Rose. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. He just does. I mean, all these other people who are bad actors. In fact, I would put Shoeless Joe Jackson back in the Hall of Fame simply because he was famous. What else you got?
I would put Shoeless Joe Jackson in. Look at his numbers in the 1919 World Series. I guess he took the money, but he didn't throw anything.
Right. Yeah. And then that was those were the days that they paid ball players horribly, and that actually was in my own lifetime. I mean, I remember when I was a teenager, the guys were making 10, 15, 20 grand, 25,000, 7,000. It wasn't until Koufax and Drysdale, I don't know if you're familiar with it, really got a little nutty. I mean, Babe Ruth made big money, Mickey Mantle, but no one made money in baseball. And they held out for $100,000 each. It was a big deal. And I remember the first guy to get like $250,000, which seemed enormous at the time, was Nolan Ryan. And now it's nothing. Now mediocre ball
Chump change.
But you know what? At least they're getting their fair share now. Hockey was the worst. Hockey, I think I've said this many times, and I tend to repeat myself. Hockey had icons that died eating cat food. I mean, one of the greatest defensemen before Bobby Orr, and still probably one of the top 3 or 4 that ever played, is a guy by the name of Doug Harvey, not the ref. He died sleeping in a railroad car. One of the greatest Rangers of all time, Camille Henry, died eating cat food. And it was a league that treated the players horribly. So, all righty. I see we have a caller whom we should take. No, I'm looking for, but I'm waiting for my guest to come in, and we'll try and get hold of that caller. But before we let you go, have you been looking and reading about your football picks?
Well, line's still at 1. I don't think it's going to change too much. Maybe go up to 1.5, maybe 2 for the Chiefs. But I think it's going to be a great game. I like the Chiefs.
Let's see who's there. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester.
Good morning. It's Anthony. How are you?
Hey, Anthony. How are you?
Is Jake still on?
Yeah, he is, of course. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning. That's why I've been trying to get in. Did you see the video of Altuve in the Divisional Series Championship?
When he was telling people not to rip his shirt off?
Yep.
Yeah.
What do you think, Anthony?
What do I think? Did you? I sent it to you. I know you didn't have a chance to look at it, I'm sure, because it was this morning, and I'm sure you were doing show prep and trying to get the double feed off.
Yeah, right.
But it's very visible that he's clenching his shirt closed, and you could see him mouth, "Don't rip off my shirt. Yeah. I'm mic'd."
Oh,
then he makes a beeline to the dugout.
Shoot.
And he changes.
He makes a beeline to the dugout, rips something off or from under his clothing, throws it into the dugout, and heads into the clubhouse.
Wow. Wow. I will check it out. Thank you for sending it. But you've seen it, Jake. Speak to him.
No, I think it's pretty close to a smoking gun.
Pretty close.
And he does sound like
if that ain't a 12 gauge at point blank range, I don't know what is.
Hey, Anthony, I thought of you before. I'm so glad you called because I just had to get into that riff, and we don't do it enough. What it was like when we were younger in school. You probably heard me with Duffy. Do you have any stories like that here in New York?
Well, I went to public school.
But
I wasn't privileged to go to a private school, but back in those days we had religious instructions.
Yeah.
And the church was directly, as you know, Bob. I went to Columbus, so the church is directly across the street.
Mm-hmm.
So every Wednesday afternoon, school would dismiss early, and we would go across the street to have our religious instructions. And let's just say I spent more time up where the choir sings.
Were you smoking up there?
It wasn't in the boys' room.
It was,
and there are many ways to smoke.
Oh, it was a different time. Man,
yeah.
I still.
No, I've felt the yardstick multiple times.
Oh yeah, me too.
And the pointers, and the fingernails.
Oh man, those were great times. Come in, Professor. Yeah. You have to see.
It builds character. It builds character.
You have to see Professor Breslin all wrapped up, and now you will get to see him because we're going to put him on. Okay. But yeah, in fact, we're going to ask Professor Breslin because I'm sure he went to Catholic schools too. Some of the things we went through. But man, it was.
But think about that, Bob. Think about a time when the public schools actually allowed you out early to go to a religious instruction.
It was a different time, my friend.
Yep.
It was very much a different time. I'm going to check that email. In fact, wait, before you go, say hello to Dr. Breslin, and we got to put now the doctor. Guess what? You're on film. Da-da-da-da. Hi, say hi there. Professor, before we get into what you usually do with us, we've been having some fun with a number of different things, and you're a big sports guy. We were talking about myself and a professor and myself and another guest. We're talking about our times in Catholic schools and different things. But also, we wanted to ask you about this particular caller, Anthony, regular to the show. You've probably heard him. He sent us a film earlier today of Altuve saying, don't rip my shirt off, I'm mic'd. Did you hear anything about this? What's your take on that, and what's your take on the Hall of Fame?
Hall of Fame's a very nice place. I've been there 4 times.
No, I know you have. No, but about the guys that are going into.
I even wrote a story for Travel Holiday about all the sports halls of fame, way back when. So, I'm a peritus when it comes to halls of fame. Anyway, I think there's a certain subjective element to it that once when you and I were on another station talking, and you had an intern, I think, who was a sports nut, and it was that very question about the people on the ballot. Mm-hmm. And this guy just reeled off statistics. And I'm like, well, I don't do that. That's not what I do. Or, occasionally in a watering hole someplace, you get to the same thing. I think there's so much of the subjective element, and a lot of it is where you played. That if you played in the New York area or Los Angeles or Chicago, where there are more voters in the baseball hall, the baseball writers, you're going to have more votes. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you played in a smaller market where there's only 1 or 2 beat writers, you're not going to have as many votes backing you up as they do.
Like we were talking about before. And Anthony, before you go, Andrew Jones, did you know he was as good as he was when he came to the Yankees at the end of his career?
Well, I knew he was good before he came to the Yankees. But I happen to agree with Professor Breslin. And let's face it, as long as humans are involved, it's going to be subjective. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it's going to be. Do I feel that there were some people that made it that didn't deserve it, and some that didn't, like Pete Rose that should have?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what makes us all human.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, and Professor, we were talking also about what it was like. Now, I'm older than you are. I know that, and I don't need you to remind me in your professorial
You're older than both of us.
Thank you very much. But did you go to Catholic grammar school with the nuns?
I was a publican for elementary school and middle school. You know, what we call junior high school. However, then, as I've mentioned on a few occasions, I went off to a seminary high school.
Oh, okay.
A high school seminary where there were no nuns, but there were priests in long black habits and rosary beads. And I do not regret that experience. I cherish it. I'm even organizing another reunion
you mentioned
of the
that
guys, because Mercyhurst University had bought it and had maintained it very nicely, but they are selling it off, and now they're giving us one more little go back home and walk the promenade and see the place in the beautiful Gothic chapel. And
so, but you don't have any stories of those days, like with the way he has many. I guess we'll move on and more formally announce you then.
As far as pedophilia and priest abuse, not in our seminary. That guys have talked about it over the years, and we say no, not that we knew about. Other seminaries, you hear some pretty nasty stories. But as far as you might have been talking about the nuns and the discipline and so forth.
We were talking about that, and also the brother that made me clean the rat cages.
Yeah. Well, that's what my colleagues, my classmates coming from the Catholic schools, when I told them that, you just wore whatever you wanted, to school within reason. There were no uniforms. And they said, oh, well, we got a better education than you do. Well, within a couple of months, they saw that that was not really true. I thought I was going to get kicked out within a week because I didn't know enough religion stuff.
You probably should have been kicked out.
Well, they didn't know what I was doing, so they never caught up with me.
Well, why don't you get Anthony to fess up when he went for religious study over at the church down by Washington, what he was doing up in the choir when he was supposed to be at religious instruction?
I'm gonna.
Oh, in novitiate, we used to drink altar wine.
No, you did not.
Yeah, because in high school, the altar wine was locked up. But then in novitiate, that was the year 69 to 70, up on a holy hill outside of Baltimore. And the world was falling apart, and we were there praying for him. And now the sacristans had the wine. And so one of my colleagues actually got what we call nailed, that you got in trouble for it, that every week there were these two guys who were called the Slaters. And they were supposed to keep track of what you did right and what you did wrong. No, not right, wrong. And I had one of them across the hall from me, and I had the other guy I was working in the greenhouse with. So I was nailed no matter what I did. And one of the guys, I was just amazed that he didn't get shipped, that meant sent home, on the spot, where this later said drinking altar wine. And the priest...
What kind of wine was it anyway?
It was port. Leo Hannigan, Lord rest him, our other novice master, he left the priesthood, got married, and he just passed away the other day at 93. Leo said with a perfectly straight face, "So, Frater Riley, I thought you were more of a, what was it, Chablis kind of man."
My God. Okay, I got a question for you.
Wasn't Chardonnay, because Chardonnay wasn't out yet.
Yeah.
Bob, it's obvious you weren't an altar boy.
No, I was an altar boy. No, I was a good altar boy.
And you didn't drink. And you didn't drink the wine.
No, I honestly
That's why
didn't.
I only lasted 3 weeks.
No, but I do have to say this: we had one priest who really used to make me fill up that chalice.
Oh yeah.
Some guys, so they get a little buzz on in the
Gallo
morning.
special.
Because they got 2 full glasses when you add it up.
Man, this one like Vince is if Vince is listening. He was an altar boy where I was as well, and we had Monsignor Sal, who was great, but he used to get angry if I didn't. He gave me one of those.
Yeah, some of those guys had pretty nasty tempers.
Well, not if I didn't fill up the wine glass. The chalice was like overflowing.
And of course, I think it's Christmas and All Souls Day that the priest is allowed to say 3 masses. And one of the older priests, they just used to knock them right out. One after another. 7 o'clock, one altar boy, 2 altar boys, 3 altar boys. And the one older priest said, by the time I get a little tipsy. And I'm thinking now, this guy had the equivalent of a bottle of wine.
I got a reset for the good professor. Anthony, thank you very much for the call. That was great stuff. And all righty, I just have to give a little weather report and announce the following. First of all, we're going to look at the weather. And the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. It's 21 right now, and it's cold out there. We saw the professor come in all bundled up. We talked a little baseball with him, but we have other things to talk about as well. It's going to get up to 34 at the height today, but it'll average out around 30. Tonight, mostly clear, partly cloudy. Partly cloudy and cold, but reasonable lows, at least the seasonable lows, I should say. I can't read anymore, at about 18 degrees, so it'll be chilly again tonight. Tomorrow, sunny and not as cold as today, with highs around 38. Wednesday night, mainly clear with lows 24. Thursday, mostly sunny sky. The high will be 42. The overnight low 28. And Friday, still more sun, Doc. The high will be 44. And Saturday, they're tracking for another storm. You'll have to check it with us tomorrow. And our next guest, and we brought him in informally because it was good to see him, and we wanted to get him on camera while we were still talking sports with our sports guru, Jake. He's a professor of mass communications and ethics. Did I say mass comm and ethics? Well, I guess that's right. Yeah, that's correct. At Iona College.
We did change the name of the department. It is now Media and Strategic Communications.
Oh, that's interesting. They changed the name of it. So
But I still teach media law and ethics. At least I try.
Media law. Why strategic communications? Where did that come from?
Well, we're finding that a lot of our colleagues across the country are agreeing that the Department of Mass Communication really doesn't cover everything that we offer. And today, the first class of the intro class, we still go at Introduction to Mass Communication. I pose that question. What is mass communication today? The previous definition, the heterogeneous scattered. In other words, you had to own a radio station, you had to have a television newspaper in order to reach the masses. Today, you don't. That an ordinary person can become a mass communicator according to that definition. And they truly do. Now, do you have the promotional ability to reach the entire world? Well, you have the technical ability. But is it necessarily going to be the target audience that you're going after? So you have to be strategic in your communication. Now, we also still offer what we would consider to be traditional journalism, the print journalism, digital media journalism, and also for broadcast and visual. Because even with that definition of the Department of Broadcast, well, how many broadcast stations do we still have? So in order to cover that, we use more of the visual media perspective. But we still offer the 4 concentrations of one being visual, broadcast cable, as you would think of it, digital print journalism, multi-platform, as the term goes, and then also PR and advertising.
Okay, and then what we're seeing is, and as we do here, after these shows are chopped up, we do put them on podcasts. Podcasts are becoming huge, and people are making money doing it as well, Doctor.
Before it was, he's got a podcast. Okay, fine. Whose podcast? Is it, out of his basement? What's he doing? Or is it through a syndicated program where he's getting some kind of promotion or she's getting some kind of advertising support? So the idea of using social media in order to promote your podcast, that is a whole nother form of promotion and advertising and publicity that we are offering in our strategic and media and strategic communications department.
That's amazing.
Which, of course, class comes back today. I don't have a class until 5 o'clock.
Oh, so. I was going to say it because you look all relaxed. Professor.
Well, tomorrow, my usual busy day is Monday, Wednesday. I have a 9 o'clock class and then 2 classes in the afternoon and a third at night. And then Tuesday, Thursday, I have 1 class, then sports journalism. Teaching sports journalism after a 6-year hiatus. I'm doing the sports journalism course again. So we're going to minor league hockey. We're going.
When are you going to minor league hockey?
I had a call into the Sound Tigers. I haven't heard back yet, but they've been very gracious in the past. Since they don't have a Wednesday night game, a Tuesday night game to accommodate our schedule, as the NIT semifinal is Tuesday night, and there's a Iona women's game Tuesday night we'll go see. We will go on weekends. Problem is a lot of our students work part-time, which I have tremendous admiration for. When I was at Fox and NBC and I did hiring, that's what I looked for. I looked for that person who was working part-time, who already knew how to show up and do a job. And so I have tremendous respect and admiration for our students who do that. So for the Sound Tigers, we usually go on a Sunday afternoon towards the end of the season.
Okay.
And they're very gracious to accommodate us, giving us a little press conference afterwards, giving us the press seats and the stats
I'm
and
going
so
to go
forth.
when you go. I got to see how you do this. It'll be a lot of
Oh,
fun.
good. I can have a Sunday off. You can teach the class.
I will. Just tell me. I'll tell them what I do here. But apropos of covering an event, there is all this jockeying going on now over, obviously, the Democrats want to get as much coverage of the impeachment as possible because it's really about the election next year. And the Republicans are making it at night. They're doing this and that. But at the end of the day, with electronic media such as it is today, are the Republicans going to be successful in squelching how much of this gets out?
Well, on the way over, I was contemplating whether or not what is being done here is what would be considered a prior restraint, which the court has been very clear. There is a very heavy burden of presumption against prior restraint, of stopping publication and broadcast before it happens. Well, they'd argue, well, we're not restraining you from broadcasting. We're not just giving you the access that you need. So when the White House was taking away press credentials, it came out, is a press credential a right or is it a privilege? Do you have to give someone a press pass to cover the White House? And I think with this, it's more of not just a legal, but a moral obligation.
Well, morality has gone. It no longer exists.
The
in this
American
country,
people,
so.
the world, should be seeing what is happening in that Senate chamber. Wall-to-wall coverage. Put a pool camera in, let everybody plug in, and let the world watch. Not this, we'll have a camera and we'll let you see what we feel like showing you.
Now, who can even help with this? Who can make sure that we see it?
Well, maybe we go to the Supreme Court. Roberts, the guy running the show there, he's got a little thing. But
no, but can he tell them, no, you can't do
well,
this?
Well, no, the Chief Justice, I don't know within the powers of him being the judge of running the actual Senate trial, whether or not he has the ability to say, no, turn on the cameras and let
Someone
everybody see it.
Someone would have to sue in order to make this happen?
Well, I imagine then McConnell and his pals would turn around and try to stop it. So it is a rather tender legal question about,
that's my question. Is it tender?
The right
talking about
of access to broadcast or to show a Senate impeachment trial. There really isn't any case law about that. C-SPAN, of course, has wall-to-wall coverage.
No, but they're even forbidding
of
C-SPAN.
Of the usual Senate and House hearings.
Activities.
Of course, when they first started it, some of the legislators got a little upset because they were panning the empty chamber. And they said, no, you keep the camera right on the front. None of these little things that show there's nobody actually there except the people who are speaking. And once, when I was living in D.C., one of my friends came in for a Fox event and graciously hired me as freelance. It was after I left. And I took her over to the Capitol. And we went to the House and she said, and she goes, there's nobody here. What are they doing? I go, welcome to Washington.
I mean, they just want to get stuff on the record.
Yeah.
So that's what they do. So net, what's your take? Do you think we'll see much of it?
No, it's going to be very selective. I'm sure that, I keep on saying McConnell, and well, he's the one running it, and the people who made him the majority leader are going to limit it to coverage that they think to be favorable to their side.
Okay. But will there not have been some record that sooner or later makes it out of those chambers anyway? Won't there be?
I was thinking about that too. Transcripts, I believe there's a transcript of the Clinton trial someplace, at least I hope there is, that, after all this time that the Freedom of Information Act does not allow, although that specifically goes to more of the executive branch, whether it would fall under classified hearings that, the transcript of those are never released. But we know across the street at the Supreme Court, you can go and listen. You can't write anything down. You can't record it. There is audio recordings of Supreme Court oral arguments, but there is no video. And the actual deliberations that the justices do in their conference room, the only ones who are in that room are the justices, nobody else.
Okay. Now, during the, you may not know this offhand, but during the Clinton impeachment, was that all? I remember I was working at the time, so you couldn't watch it all day. I was on the air. Did they, or was I doing
No,
something?
it wasn't wall-to-wall coverage. It was, again, the same idea of limited coverage.
It was limited coverage, so we should be.
The opening and the closing kind of thing. It wasn't just...
Again, our guest, Professor Jack Breslin, what's your take on all this? Things have changed so much. We heard the other day where the former White House advisor from Breitbart was at a news conference in Paris. And he said that, hey, you know what? It's all about the media. It's not the Democrats. It's not this guy. It's not that guy. He was the counselor to the president, the far-right counselor. He said, the enemy is the press. We need to attack the media. We need to manipulate the media. Now, what can the media do to keep... I'm asking the question not properly. Are we at the point where we can't trust anything anymore? Is this going to be self-correcting, or are we in such a new environment that we have to let it play out?
I think there is an element of what is the climate towards the media and the idea of media credibility. There is also the ethical and legal implications of media coverage, and is there a bias by that one particular outlet over another? We know there are some pretty clear examples. However, in my little studies of 19th century press, particularly the emergence of the independent press over the partisan, when you look at some of the party press, there was some pretty nasty stuff that was there on both sides. And even when it was supposed to be a more independent press, that they were independently owned, there was over bias in some of these. A paper I did last year where I looked at, it was called Military Chieftains for President, No Experience Necessary. And I looked at the election of William Henry Harrison and of Zachary Taylor.
Yeah.
And how Harrison did have some political experience. He'd been governor of the Ohio Territories. He had been member of Congress. But the basic Tippecanoe and Tyler, too, was playing on his military record. And it was like Tippecanoe and Tyler, who? That they really didn't know who Tyler was. And then, of course, the shortest term, 1 month, Harrison was out and Tyler was in. With Taylor, it was like, yeah, this guy's a great general and he'll make a great president. So there, the pro-Taylor or pro-Harrison, the pro-Whigs, they just ignored the fact that, okay, Taylor doesn't have any experience, so what? He's a general, he's a brave guy. And I'm wondering if there are parallels to that today, that we just ignore the media because of a bias or because of lack of depth and lack of reporting and interpretation. We'll just ignore certain factors. Now, of course, if you go up to the primaries in New Hampshire, and a few years ago when Kerry was the nominee, I did that and spent 2 days on the trail, you saw how easily the media covering it like a horse race, could be led by the nose.
By the candidate?
By the candidate's press people. So Kerry was the best organizer. Of course, he came out of Iowa as the front runner because Dean had his little shouting thing in Iowa. And I thought Dean was the smoother talker. You know, I saw him at a town meeting, whereas Kerry's event was very staged. But they did it smart. They picked their issue of the day, which it was health care for veterans. And, of course, Kerry was a veteran. And they had Max Cleland and a couple other veterans up there, the South Carolina senator, not Graham, the other one, I'm thinking of it. He was up there, too. And in the middle of it, this lady gets up, you know, it was town hall style with this video of Kerry and knocking down Bush of not caring about veterans' health care. And she says, well, I'm not a veteran, you know, and I came to this to hear about what you think about this and that. And Kerry, of course, being an articulate guy, said, well, yes, so what are your concerns? Now, the same day, up in Manchester, there was a healthcare forum. Kerry didn't go, but Kuchnich was there, as was Lieberman and the other guys. I forget for a second. I'll remember them. They got up and did their little 2-minute song and dance. But Kerry wasn't there because he didn't need it. And then Clark, he had a rally that night with Mary Steenburgen and Ted Danson were there. So you got that sense of the town hall format where Dean was the first one I saw him, you know, on a morning like this, where it was just kind of a potpourri free-for-all, just throwing questions at the candidate. But even there, it was the sentiment in the room was very anti-media. That the New York Daily News, and I still use the cartoon in class, had this cartoon on the front page, The Wheels Come Off. And there was a picture of Dean on his little bus with the wheels coming off. And he held that up. And he says, take that, Daily News. And people go, "Arr!" and against the media. Now, of course, I had a press pass on that said Daily Freeman. And I went, right. And so there is that First Amendment right to parody, to make fun of our political leaders. That is a First Amendment right. But, of course, the people who were in favor of those folks found that particular cartoon to be very offensive. Because I went around asking people what they thought about it, and they were very, very negative. Your newspaper doesn't do that, do you?
What now? How offensive is this to you? It certainly was offensive to me because we should have respect for these trials. They're calling him innocent before the trial.
Now, you could say at first glance, because the innocent is above the heads of McConnell and Trump, they're saying they're attributing that to them. And then now for the trial. But as you say, the Post with their editorial slant, which sometimes gets into their news coverage, they're saying he's innocent. That could be another way to interpret it. Or that they have another one there, guilty.
They have the small guilty and now for the trial.
They have the small, yeah.
Oh, well. Charade. Professor, where are we headed? Where are we headed in terms of journalism in this country and a free press and free speech? Where the hell are we headed? And the left has a lot to answer for now, too.
Yeah, we could say that the First Amendment guarantees the 5 freedoms of speech, press, petition, religion, petition, and assembly. And there's a reason it's the First Amendment, because it's the most important. Well, actually, there were 2 amendments before that got knocked down. There were actually 12 amendments suggested. 2 got knocked down, and the 3rd became the first. Fine. But when I go into class tomorrow with media law and ethics, I'll say there's a reason that it's the first. And without a free press, without free speech, we do not have a democracy.
Well, no.
And so, therefore, I believe that it will survive. It will continue to thrive. Yes, there is a time where, especially in times of national crisis, there is a threatening element to press freedom. And that people think, oh, there should be more government control. There was a survey a few years ago where they asked people, do you think that a government official should be in the newsroom or in, if a television station, newspaper, radio station, whatever, to censor? And a shocking number of people said yes. Well, we got countries that do that. If you'd like to move there, but here in this country, we don't do that.
What was their sensibility? Why
But
did they think that was necessary?
then we would know the truth. Well, then the truth as who says it, as the government says it, or the political party who is in control says it.
Now, a tough spot for you as a professor, but I need your expertise here, and a little less of, hopefully, you don't have to feel compromised by this. But what can we do about the so-called woke movement that does try and control who speaks at colleges, who's allowed to speak, dismissing people out of hand because we don't agree with them? That's a great danger to free speech.
Yeah, we bring that up in the section of the course on student speech and press rights. And I kind of started off with a hypothetical that, so-and-so, of course, you have to keep the parameters. You have to say, okay, high school or college, private or public. So we'll start off with the public big college.
Yes.
That when Jean Kirkpatrick, for example, came to the University of Minnesota, I wasn't there yet, but they talked about how she didn't even get a minute into her talk, and it was paid appearance, taxpayers' money. And she was shouted down by these hecklers.
Why?
And of course, because they didn't agree with her policies. When she was the UN ambassador under Reagan, and they just kept on going. That finally they had to remove the demonstrators, and then she gave her talk. There's a concept in law called heckler's veto, that when there is the threat of violence, such as that, then the speech can be canceled, that the administrators have the authority to do that. Now, it's a very controversial idea.
Well, it's very controversial because one can threaten violence and then...
Yeah, and how do you determine it? Going back to the old clear and present danger doctrine, which, went away years ago, that Congress has the right to prevent something that is clear and present danger. Well, how do you know? Now it is immediate irreparable harm. That, it's an imminent incitement to lawless action. It's happening now. Even in cases of cross burnings, that cases have come out that you can't outlaw cross burning, period. But a lot of cities have anti-cross burning ordinances. But the one in St. Paul, Minnesota, was found to be unconstitutional in RAV versus St. Paul because it was viewpoint discriminatory. And Justice Scalia, in his reasoning, said, just because we have the problem doesn't mean that you add the First Amendment to the fire. Make no mistake about it. We find this to be a reprehensible act of putting a burning cross on the lawn of a black family. You can't do that. But in another case, Black versus Virginia, where they try to blame all cross burning, Justice O'Connor says, all right, it's a symbol, as Justice Thomas brought out in one of the few times that he participated in an oral argument. He had grown up in the segregated South and said, this was a symbol of a reign of terror. O'Connor brings out, yes, it is a symbol. However, it has to be, in order to ban it, it has to be used to incite impending immediate violence now. And a lot of people are very offended by that. And there has never really been that definitive Supreme Court hate speech case that really outlines, what's protected and what's not. But when it is meant to provoke immediate irreparable harm or immediate danger of violence, imminent incitement to lawless action, then that speech can be curtailed.
You know what's interesting in all of this, and even in the gender wars, I don't know if you saw the piece last week, but there is a group, a long-standing feminist organization. But one of their tenets is that we define sexuality according to genetics and how you were born. And they were forbidden to speak at a college, even though they're a left-wing group, because of the whole issue of they versus he, she, gender fluidity. Now, when we get into court cases and things like that, how much trouble are we going to get into for the sake of political correctness, playing games with the language? Aren't there contradictions there?
Yes, there are times where the interpretation of a decision can be viewed in several different ways. Mm-hmm. And so in one state interpreting that particular federal decision, they might look at it one way. In another state, they might look at it another way. And judges in their interpretations a different way. A few years ago, I came out of journalistic retirement and covered a murder trial over in Goshen of a gentleman named Christopher Porco. He had attacked his parents with an axe, killed his father, maimed his mother. He is up in Dannemora on a lifetime stint up there.
Nice fellow.
Lifetime decided to do a movie, the Romeo Killer or something was like called, and he in the prison law library comes up. He didn't finish at the University of Rochester. Mm-hmm. And he goes and writes up his brief, and a judge up there in Clinton County actually stopped Lifetime from showing the movie.
Why?
And of course, because first of all, he considered it defamatory. He thought it was false, even though mostly relied on court record and court transcripts. And they played a little fast and loose with the facts. But he also thought of the right of publicity, that you got to pay me to make a movie about me. Well, sorry, pal, that ain't going to fly. Down in Albany, the judges down there went, maybe you were sleeping that day in law school, but we don't think so. So it was overturned, and Lifetime showed the movie. But that shows that I could give that as a hypothetical in class, which, gee, maybe I might, of an example of power restraint or defamation or right of publicity, and say, what say ye? And I would hope after 15 weeks of listening to my eloquence, the students would say, no, he can't do that. But did it anyway.
It's also very interesting. Again, our guest is Dr. Jack Breslin. He's the Mass Communications and Ethics Professor, and now Strategic Communications and Ethics Professor.
Media and Strategic Communications.
Media and Strategic Communications.
It's going to take me a while to get used to that one.
At Iona College. And sometimes it's hard to know when someone's just a spoof. There was a piece I saved for you. Bad week this is in the news aggregator, The Week. A bad week for alternative realities after the White House Twitter account released a picturesque photo of the official presidential home against a night sky full of snowflakes beneath the caption, "First snow of the year." Temperatures in Washington were 70 that day. So, but why do people even care? I mean, they were just trying to say there was snow today, but they put it. And they obviously doctored the photograph.
Being cute, I guess. Yeah.
But there's no problem with that, right? I didn't think that was a big problem. Now, let's get back to the issue at hand. Where are we headed in free speech and journalism today? Are we headed to a good place? Is it in trouble? Do I worry too much?
I think that particularly in a time of national crisis, the need for a free press, the need for objective, if that still exists, or the right of the people to know and the right of the media to cover it is essential, no matter what side of this impeachment you are on. And you should be entitled to express your views. Now, the whole idea of the marketplace of ideas, of everybody being allowed to talk, is actually possible. How powerful your voice is because of your political clout or your influence or your prestige, that's another factor. But now with social media, it gives more and more power to the individual to express their ideas. Whereas before, with the marketplace of ideas, it was if you owned a radio station, television station, newspaper, that was the only way that you got your voice out there. Mm-hmm. And you could write a letter to the editor. But heck, I've been writing letters to the editor to Time Magazine since I was in the 11th grade?
A fetus.
Yeah. And I never got a single one in. Whatever. They just didn't like it. However, as I say in class, if I wrote John J. Breslin, Ph.D., Associate Professor, Media and Strategic Communication at Iona College, it might get in. But suppose certain people didn't like what I said. Well, I might get a little trouble. But meanwhile, if I put John J. Breslin, ESQ, I'm not an attorney. I'm not licensed to practice law, okay, but I got in because I had that ESQ after my name. Or I put down John J. Breslin, member of Congress.
Okay.
And some fact checker didn't bother to see if I was one of the 532.
How much has it changed in terms of writing stuff that's deliberately false or misleading, such as what goes on now on the internet, such as what a Sean Hannity does at 8 o'clock at night on television? How much more is that prevalent than in years past?
I think that if I showed you some articles from those 19th century newspapers.
Well, that was just total lies, right?
Right. But I didn't show you the date, and I blanked out the name of the president or the person being attacked. And I said, okay, take a guess who that is. I might get you to say, oh, well, that's about Klobuchar at the Iowa caucuses. Well, no, this is about Grover Cleveland back in 1884. So I think that this problem of fake news and people just making stuff up under a masthead has been a problem ever since, well, I guess maybe the Roman Forum, the people writing graffiti underneath what the Senate put up.
Interesting stuff. All right, then. I have one more question for you with regard to this. Where did I write it?
And of course, folks,
money.
I
That's
have
money.
to. It's the beginning of the semester, so once again, I make my offer to our distinguished host that if he'd like to take the midterm of the final, I'm certainly happy to bring it over.
I can take the midterm.
Actually,
Would be
I
fun.
have 3 exams now. 3 exams because my fellow educators. There's a lot of material in a course like media law and ethics, and it's a lot more fair to break it up in 3 parts rather than have these 2 big chunks. And I find that the students like that a lot more. And plus, it gives us the chance to discuss
Which piece?
and to have a dialogue.
Which piece would be more appropriate for a local news guy? You should bring the test over. I'll take it.
Okay.
And how much of it is intuitive?
Well,
Because a lot of it should be. Law and ethics ought to be reasonably intuitive.
Well, I could, the ones that I would give you the case studies of the ethical problems. There's a tendency to say, oh, I think it's right, I think it's wrong, but there's no ethical reasoning. It's not based on any kind of theory. It's not based on any kind of model, and that's, what we stress. That's in the ethics part. In the law part, there are some that you could ask the common person on the street and they would get it right. But there's some others where, especially when you're interpreting a law or determining whether or not a law is constitutional or not, that there's a certain test. Or, for example, with copyright, the fair use test, which, of course, I saw Little Women last night, and I am reading the book, too. I never claim to be normal.
No, you have not.
And, of course, the best part of the movie is where, Lucy Marie Alcott is sitting there with the publisher, and he says, okay, I'm going to give you, a lousy royalty, and I'm going to own the copyright. And she goes, copyright? And she goes, no, I own the copyright.
I got one more question for you. And that is money. There was a piece in the paper this past weekend about how, and I don't blame them because since Citizens United, you can spend as much as you want. How do you equate money and free speech and what Citizens United had to say and the fact that a corporation or a business can now be considered a person?
Yeah, Citizens United is a case I admit I don't cover in class because, yes, it is political speech in a sense and campaign financing and stuff. And the amount of time that I have in 15 weeks to cover the crucial
but still, don't forget
elements
about
of
what you
libel,
teach.
privacy, and so forth, it's a case that I find a bit troubling because I heard both sides of it, that the attorneys for both sides of Floyd Abrams and Burt Newborn were at this law conference that I go to every year, Practicing Law Institute. They have the Communications into Law. Here they were working on the case as the seminar was going on, and the two of them went after each other. It was kind of fun to watch. But then when the decision came out, it was like, huh? So in other words, you can pour as much money as you want. Back to your question. That's one of the troubling elements, that in the marketplace of ideas, money means a heck of a lot, or meant a heck of a lot, because you had to own the station or something, and you could dominate the airways. Mm-hmm. Now, in theory, with social media, the internet, open, free, uninhibited, but is there the control of the internet as well with net neutrality versus reasonable management? That with reasonable management, there is more control, and money is going to mean something in control and access to the internet. So yes, money does play a big role in who gets their voice into the marketplace of ideas.
Apropos of that, do you think that Michael Bloomberg has a shot?
It'll be interesting to watch, where you can ignore the first couple, because not that many delegates. But I still maintain there will not be a candidate coming out of the caucuses or the primaries and Andrew Cuomo.
Excuse me?
Yeah. There will nobody, of course, everybody says I'm crazy. Nobody will be the nominee coming out of the first ballot. There'll be no nominee. Everybody's free then, and up stands King Cuomo, and he's the nominee.
Okay, one last thing.
You heard it here first.
Yes. Well, no, actually,
Except maybe he's thinking about it. Maybe I'll get a phone call this afternoon.
Curtis Leawood calls him King Cuomo, He even showed up at the first convention when he was running, dressed as a king, saying, "I am King Cuomo." Curtis Leawood, the broadcaster. Well, Professor, thank you very, very much. Oh, I did have another item.
Okay.
How did the Times come out and endorse two people?
I was reading that very late or very early this morning, and I went, "Say what?" I mean, I don't get what you're doing here, and isn't it a little early to be doing this?
And they're both different. One's far to the left, the other one's a little more reasonable.
Yeah, so...
Well, Professor Jack Breslin, thank you very much. I got to get it right now. Media, Strategic Communications, and Ethics Professor at Iona College.
All right, I'll take that.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for being with us. All righty, that slams the lid on things for today. A little early leave. We'll find out what happened with those double feeds. I want to thank, of course, the professor. I want to thank... Anthony for his call in, Mike Duffy, Mike Edelman, Vince Russo. Of course, we had Lorraine Carl stop in. Our sponsors today, the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhdc.com. Aging Issues Management, their partners, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And don't forget Dominic's Fine Cigars. Dominic's Fine Cigars, the sponsors of this week. Picks with Jake Schaefer, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente Padrons and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located on Boston Post Road here in Larchmont. And tomorrow we have a pretty good show lined up for you. Professor, speaking of professors, she should be back with us. She's been very busy lately, what with impeachments and stuff. But we should be hearing from Professor Jeannie Zano tomorrow. We'll also be talking with Black Westchester Magazine and a number of other guests. And Harlan Ullman will join us at 9 o'clock. Thanks, everybody.